Chapter 987. Su Wenqing raised his eyebrows and revealed a subtle smile, deliberately provoking Su Yuantek. Your sister-in-law is a good person. She has not mistreated you over the years, Su Yuantek said. Regardless of the marriage, Su Yuantek was a man. In front of outsiders, he had to protect his wife's reputation. Moreover, although he had no love for Shenxi, she was still Mrs. Su. He could not humiliate her at will. Ha! Su Wenqing smiled. Yes, she is a good person. It's just that you have no feelings for her. In fact, it was more than no feelings. When Shenxi married into the family, he was still young, about 10 years old. The children of the Su family had always matured early. Even if they were 10 years old, they would understand some principles. They would not fool around, nor would they get too close to that woman. At that time, his elder sister liked Shenxi. The two of them often chatted together. His elder brother was often not at home, so he did not see much. However, he knew that the relationship between the two of them was similar to that of biological sisters. However, after his elder sister disappeared, he did not see Shenxi sad. Perhaps it was just an act on the surface. In private, there was nothing special about her. A few months later, she even met the wife of another family. It was the same as before. Moreover, his elder brother did not ask for anything from her. The two of them were not so much respectful to each other. It was better to say that they were estranged from each other like strangers. Although this woman's smile was sweet and gentle, it could not enter other people's hearts. He did not know why his elder brother could bear it for so many years. At this time, a figure passed by the door in the blink of an eye. Jing Yunzhao tilted his head and smiled slightly, pretending not to see it. Second uncle's words should have been heard by Shenxi. Was that why he was too ashamed to show up now? However, even if she heard it, she probably would not have any reaction. But he didn't expect her to come back from the hospital so suddenly. Yuanqing, if you don't want to get married, you don't have to drag me and your sister-in-law into it. If you weren't satisfied with the person last time, I'll arrange another one for you next time. There are so many daughters from prestigious families in the capital. I don't believe that none of them can catch your eye. Su Yuantek didn't mean to blame him. Naturally, he wouldn't reprimand his younger brother for Shenxi. Jing Yunzhao felt that Shenxi was a little sad. She thought that she was in the best condition to be Mrs. Su, but in fact, for so many years, except for fame and wealth, it seemed that she didn't even get the slightest bit of concern from his uncle. It was no wonder. After all, Shenxi and first uncle didn't get married because they liked each other. Su Wenqing only listened to half of what his elder brother, Su Yuantek, said. He didn't take it to heart at all. There weren't many cars waiting for the meal, so he sat with them and talked about everything. Compared to Su Yuantek, who was the mayor, Su Wenqing's identity was a little more relaxed. Tang Zihua was more curious about him and asked him for advice on business. Although Su Wenqing usually looked like he didn't do his job at home, in fact, he was really capable. If he wasn't smart enough, even with the protection of the Su family, he wouldn't have been able to create his own family business. The main building was full of laughter, while the side building next to it was much quieter. On the sofa, after Shenxi and Su Yuantek had a simple meal, they sat obediently and waited for Su Yuantek's arrival. However, Su Yuantek naturally had to stay in the main building to accompany the guests, so he didn't appear for a long time. Shenxi still maintained the smile on her face, but it was a little stiff. Su Yu was even more impatient. Mom, can't I go and see that cousin? If Dad doesn't come for one night, do I have to wait here for the whole night? My body hasn't recovered yet. I can't waste time with him. Chapter 988. Su Yu's appearance had changed. His face was pitch black, as if it had been pixelated. His lips and skin had even become the same color. If he didn't open his mouth, one wouldn't be able to see his white teeth. One might even think that he was a dead object. You, Shin, she called out in dissatisfaction. She raised her head and asked the servant to do something else. Then she continued, didn't I tell you before? You have to endure at home and be polite. Do you want to be sent away? I can't endure it. Suyu was a little annoyed. Dad can't kill me anyway. I'm his only son. If I die, there will be no one in the Su family. Humph, you know what kind of person your dad is. If he really gets angry, it's hard to say. Shin, she sneered. You haven't seen how your dad treats your cousin. He can't wait to raise her to the sky. Mom has no status in the family. Now it's all up to you. If you don't behave and reassure your dad, we won't have a good life. So serious. Suyu didn't believe it. Wasn't she just a wild phoenix? A girl living in a small place like that probably didn't know any rules and etiquette. He didn't believe that she could really surpass him. Although he was afraid of his grandfather, father, and even his uncle, he knew that they would at most punish him. After all, the blood of the Su family flowed in his body. No matter what, nothing would happen. They love Jing Yunzhao. As long as you treat her well, your grandfather and father will treat you well. Although you offended her before, you didn't know her identity at that time. It's reasonable for you to reconcile now. Besides, you're in the same school as her. You can take care of each other. Shin-Chi's eyes flashed. Her eyes seemed to burst out with sparks. Every word she said was heartfelt. Suyu showed a rare look of respect and nodded. Now you have to pretend in front of your dad and promise to protect Jing Yunzhao. As for the future, there's still a long way to go. It's not certain who will have the last laugh. Shin-Chi touched the agate bead bracelet on her wrist and said with a smile. Suyu was used to his mother's reaction. Since he was told to wait, he would wait obediently. After all, he had slept quite a lot during the day in the hospital. However, when she saw the gaze of the servant not far away, she felt a little resentful. He would never have thought that Jing Yunzhao was his cousin. No wonder his father would throw him to Heizhou for her. He province was really desolate. At one point, it made him want to die. The lack of water and food made him on the verge of collapse every time. Fortunately, he persevered. He swore that as long as he returned, he would definitely teach that woman a lesson. The mother and son sat quietly in the living room. Shin-Chi looked like a good woman. When the servant saw this, she couldn't help but feel jealous. Ever since Jing Yunzhao, this Miss Biao, appeared in the family, Madame's position in the family became lower and lower. She would usually serve that Miss Biao with good food and drinks, but that Miss Biao still didn't give her any face. She always had a cold and indifferent expression, calling her Auntie Shin without leaving any face. In the past, Madame would invite some friends to the house. However, recently, in order to prevent the cousin from being unhappy, she had been holding back. She usually stayed at home for a day, which made them feel bored. Not only that, but now, when the cousin entertained guests, the young master had to accompany her. He actually put his wife and children aside. However, the Su family's family affairs were not something outsiders like them could interfere with. Chapter 989. Su Yuantek didn't stay too late in the main building. After all, the two elders had a good time chatting together, and the children couldn't talk to him. Su Wenqing's younger brother was even more reckless, and he didn't have the energy to stay alone. After getting a general understanding of Jing Yunzhao's friends, he also got up and went back to rest. But when he entered the living room of the auxiliary building, he was shocked. You, aren't you in the hospital? Su Yuantek's old face couldn't help but twitch as he asked. It wasn't that he was making a fuss, but after not seeing him for so long, he almost didn't recognize him. Su Yu's skin had become dark, and if he was thrown outside, he probably wouldn't be able to see him. This son of his used to be good-looking, but now, his appearance couldn't be seen, and his skin was so dark that he couldn't even be distinguished. Su Yuantek coughed dryly, restraining the somewhat uncontrollable laughter in his heart, and quickly restored the posture of an elder. She hurriedly came up and said with a smile, "I didn't find any problems, so I let him come back. I wanted him to meet Yun Zhao, but look at your skin color, I'm afraid Yun Zhao won't dare to recognize him." "That's true, I'm afraid this will scare his friends. Stay in the auxiliary building for the next few days and don't go out. Read more of the ancient scriptures left by the ancestors. There are great principles written in them." Su Yuantek nodded and took advantage of the situation to say. He wasn't willing to belittle Su Yu everywhere, mainly because he couldn't praise him. For Su Yu, he had consulted an expert in the education field before, and the expert said that he couldn't blindly praise and reprimand him. Therefore, he treated Su Yu very well for some days, guiding him everywhere and reasoning with him every time, hoping that he could make progress. But the result was that Su Yu thought himself infallible and felt that he had become the overlord of the family, and those days were even more outrageous. Previously, he had sent him to Heizhou because he had made a mistake, and this mistake wasn't so easy to make up for. Moreover, how could he not know what kind of character his son was? If he was freed, Zhao's friends would not be able to live in peace. In order to prevent that kind of accident from happening, it was better to give him a warning first. When Xinshi heard Su Yuantek's words, the smile on her face became even wider. "Yuer has improved. This time, I guarantee that he will listen to whatever you say." After saying that, he glanced at Su Yu. Su Yu glanced at him and immediately nodded. "All right, Dad, I'll go read." "Reading? What's so interesting about those old antiques?" There was a musty smell. Fortunately, he had hidden some interesting things in the house. Otherwise, wouldn't he be bored to death? Su Yuantek was surprised that Su Yu agreed so readily. To be honest, it was better to believe that the sun would rise from the west tomorrow than to believe that he had really changed. However, since he was so obedient this time, as a father, he wouldn't think that he was always thinking about good things. "In the future, your grandfather will live at home. Don't make him angry. I remember that you offended Zhao before. When I find a chance, I'll let you two meet. You prepare a gift and apologize to her properly. Do you understand?" Su Yuantek said again. Su Yu frowned slightly, but in front of Su Yuantek, he didn't have the courage to attack and just nodded. His skin color had become a protective layer, so that people couldn't see his disgusted expression. After saying this, Su Yuantek returned to his bedroom. His bedroom and Xinshi's bedroom were on the second floor, but they weren't in the same room. One was even on the left side of the spiral staircase, and the other was on the right side. "Mom, how many friends did cousin have?" Su Yu couldn't help but ask before returning to the room. "One old and 3 young ones. There will be one more coming tomorrow. They are all friends that she met in Huaning County. These few are going to live in our house temporarily. There will be others on the birthday. Of course, your dad and your second uncle also invited people that they have a good relationship with. It will be a big scene. Are all the people her age female? Are they beautiful?" Su Yu didn't care at all and directly changed the topic. Chapter 990. At the mention of women, Su Yu's eyes lit up. She frowned. "You don't mess around. No matter how beautiful her friends are, you can't touch them. At least, you can't touch them openly." She lowered her voice and said softly. She had known that her son liked women for a long time. She had tried to control him in the past, mainly because she was afraid that he would lose his body at such a young age. However, after a long time, she found that her son had self-control. He just liked beautiful women, not indulged in debauchery. Suyu nodded. He reached out and put his arm around Shinchi's shoulder like an obedient son. He smiled and said, "Mom, don't worry. I'll be careful. But we'll have to trouble you. Our family has never invited so many guests in all these years. Even when I was an adult, I didn't receive such treatment. That Jing Yunzhao got lucky. It's a pity. It's rare to meet such a beautiful girl, and she turned out to be my cousin. If it was in ancient times, we could keep the goodies within the family. But now, it's impossible," Suyu said with a look of pity. Shinchi shook her head and sighed. Yunzhao, that child. I really don't like her. The wife you marry in the future can't be as arrogant as her. Her family background can't be too high, and she has to be gentle and obedient. Otherwise, Mom won't be happy. Shinchi reminded him faintly. Her birth was her biggest regret. Although she had lived in the Su family for more than 20 years, even now, the wives of rich families would still talk about her behind her back. She was clear about this in her heart. However, even though they had the same background, her younger sister, Shintong, received a different evaluation. Back then, people said that Shintong was born with the talent to act. She was smart and kind because of her simple background. They also said that gold would always shine. However, when it came to her, it was different. Everyone said that she was a wild phoenix that flew out of a chicken coop. Everyone thought that she was not worthy of Su Yuantek. They thought that she was vulgar, despicable, and unworthy. Therefore, she lived her life very carefully every day. Mom, don't you think I don't know what kind of woman you like? In the future, when I pick a wife, as long as she's good-looking, you can choose her character and family background. Suyu hurriedly comforted. Anyway, even if he got married, he couldn't stay with one woman forever. Instead of getting tired of other women, he might as well find someone that his mother liked. Shinchi smiled in satisfaction. She was very satisfied. So what if it was just a lifetime deal with her husband? It was enough for her to have her son by her side. As long as she could maintain her position and reputation as Mrs. Su and see her son every day, she would be satisfied. The mother and son were very close to each other. Suyu quickly said some nice words, which made Shinchi smile even more gently. Jing Yunzhao stayed with Suchu in the annex building tonight. The next night, Xiao Haiqing also rushed over. She had been filming during this period, and the school was on vacation. Originally, Jing Yunzhao wanted her to move into the Su family to live with him. However, Xiao Haiqing had already rented a house that was very close to the set, so she rejected her proposal. If Suchu and the others hadn't come, Xiao Haiqing probably wouldn't have specially come to live with them. Isn't your crew on vacation? It's so cold, and the new year is coming soon. Suchu saw that Xiao Haiqing's makeup hadn't been washed off, and suddenly felt distressed. Now is the time when the crew is rushing to work. I have to leave before dawn tomorrow, and I can't come over every day. However, on Yun Zhao's birthday, I will tell the director and ask for leave. Xiao Haiqing said as she wolfed down the food. Chapter 991. Jing Yunzhao looked at Xiao Haiqing's appearance and exchanged glances with Su Chu. She felt like Xiao Haiqing hadn't eaten for a long time. Is it really that good? Jing Yunzhao frowned and didn't understand. Yunzhao, you don't know. Although Axian Han is a very scheming and ruthless person, he often suffers in front of the big boss. It's normal for me to starve for a few days. Plus, I've been busy from yesterday morning until today. I've almost finished filming the few scenes that were punished. In order to create the effect, the crew didn't give me any boxed lunches. Xiao Haiqing swallowed another mouthful and continued. Jing Yunzhao was a little angry. Your director didn't do anything. He shouldn't have asked for all the scenes to be realistic. In the beginning, I was a little lacking. The director suggested that I experience the feeling of hunger and despair. Actually, I would be fine if I skipped 2 meals. In the end, Yi Wan told someone else and didn't prepare any food for me for the past 2 days. She even praised me in front of the crew. I thought that it would be good for filming anyway, so I didn't refute. Xiao Haiqing smiled. Jing Yunzhao clenched his fists and didn't say anything. Don't worry, I'm not someone who only knows how to suffer losses. Yi Wan is the female lead now. It won't be good for me to have a conflict with her. It will only slow down the progress of the crew and affect me greatly. If there's anything, we can talk about it later. Speaking of which, I have to thank her. Because of what happened before, people outside said that I didn't get along with her. In the end, many anti-fans came to support me and became my loyal fans. After the fans argued, my popularity increased. Xiao Haiqing put down the cutlery in her hand and smiled mysteriously. In this industry, you need exposure if you want to make a name for yourself. I won't take the initiative to scheme, but if others scheme against me, I'll find a way to get the corresponding price from them. Jing Yunzhao glanced at her. He still felt that her stubborn temper hadn't changed at all. Harming himself and injuring the enemy by 1,000, he simply did not know how to cherish his own body. Yunzhao, you only went hungry for a few meals, but you gained a lot. The director of my scenes was very satisfied. When a reporter came to interview me, he even specially mentioned that I was professional and talented in front of the reporter. Do you know how big of an impact his words had? Also, do you think I'm stupid? The whole crew knows that Yi Wan is trying to set me up on purpose, but they don't want to expose her. It's not good for her reputation, Xiao Haiqing continued to explain when she saw that Jing Yunzhao's expression was still not good. Forget it, you're always right. Jing Yunzhao shook his head helplessly. I'll get someone to drive you there tomorrow morning. You can rest in the car for a while. It's the same now. Go to bed early after eating. Okay. Xiao Haiqing nodded repeatedly. Xiao Haiqing didn't have much of her arrogance. She was still very straightforward in front of her, but she always gave people a sense of calmness and restraint. Gan Jinchen and Tang Zihua stared at each other in disbelief. They couldn't believe that Xiao Haiqing had changed so much. She was much more tolerant now that she was beautiful. She was no longer as fierce as she used to be when she was just a little unhappy. But they had to admit that she looked more attractive now. Xiao Haiqing went to bed early and didn't have time to catch up with the others. However, on the second day, before dawn had even arrived, an earth-shattering sound suddenly rang out in the room, startling Jing Yunzhao, who was still in her sleep. The sound came from the side room. Jing Yunzhao heard the sound and jumped out of bed. She called Su Chu and immediately ran towards the source of the sound. Chapter 992. Xiao Haiqing stayed downstairs, mainly because she had to rush to the set the next day. She didn't want to wake up the people in the house. After she came out, she looked down at the railing in the corridor, and her heart skipped a beat. Xiao Haiqing was wearing simple pajamas. Her clothes were slightly pulled, revealing one of her shoulders. When she saw someone coming over, she immediately tidied herself up. The living room was dimly lit. It was not very bright, but one could still see a person lying on the floor. It was a man. The sound just now should have come from this man. What's wrong? Jing Yunzhao rushed down and asked with concern. Yun Zhao, there's a hooligan in your house, and he's a foreigner. Xiao Haiqing pointed at the man on the floor and said to Jing Yun Zhao innocently. She had to go to the set in the morning, so she woke up very early. It was only 2 or 3 in the morning, and even the servants were asleep. She prepared a simple breakfast to fill her stomach. Because her head was still very heavy, and her eyes were still not clear, she didn't turn on the strong light. Instead, she used the dimmest orange light. When she was about to go to the kitchen after washing up, she saw a black thing approaching. At that time, she thought she saw a ghost. But after all, she was in someone else's house, and she couldn't make a prompt decision to wake him up. If he was a guest in this house, it wouldn't be good for her reputation. Who knew that after the black guy came in, he was going to cover her mouth with a towel and pull her into the bedroom next door? She had experienced this kind of thing before, so how could she be so stupid as to let him do it? Although she didn't know why this black guy appeared in the Su family, she knew that eldest Uncle Su and second Uncle Su were good people. Old Man Su was also noble and righteous. Their guests would never do such a thing. So, she kicked the black guy's genitals. After the black guy shouted, she gave him a good beating. But she didn't expect his body to be so weak that he fainted within a minute. Xiao Haiqing and Jing Yun Zhao had learned martial arts before, so they were good at it. She wanted to prevent the same thing from happening to James in the future. At this moment, Jing Yun Zhao glanced at the ground, but no one could tell who this person was. He lifted his foot and pressed the alarm on the wall. His face was dark and ugly. He was too lazy to even touch the person on the ground. There were several floors above and below, and the area was large. The distance between the rooms was needless to say. If it wasn't for her good hearing, she wouldn't have been able to hear the movements in the living room after she closed the door and fell asleep. As soon as the alarm was pressed, the voices of security guards and servants could be heard from outside. The elders of the other 2 buildings were also alarmed and immediately rushed over. Su Yuantek's face was solemn. When he rushed in with the others, his eyes instantly glanced at the man lying on the ground with his neck exposed. The corner of his mouth twitched violently. "Everyone else is dismissed," Su Yuantek said to the servant through gritted teeth. The servant was puzzled, but since Su Yuantek had spoken, of course she had to listen. She hurriedly left. Jing Yun Zhao saw Su Yuantek's expression and found it strange. She lowered her head and looked at the person on the ground, but no matter how hard she tried, she couldn't find any trace of familiarity. It was no wonder she couldn't recognize Su Yu. After his trip to Heizhou, Su Yu's figure had become dry and thin. His height, which was accentuated by his hairstyle in the past, had shrunk. With his long hair, dark skin, and an unfamiliar aura from staying in Heizhou for so long, not to mention Jing Yun Zhao, even the people who lived with him day and night might not be able to recognize him. Chapter 993. After the servant left, Su Wenqing and old Master Shen entered the house. Su Yuantek looked at Shen Shi, whose face was stiff, and closed the door. "Uncle. You know this person?" Jing Yun Zhao was a little suspicious. She knew clearly who had come to the house recently. It couldn't be Su Yu's cousin. Just as she thought of this, the corner of Jing Yun Zhao's mouth twitched. She quickly took a closer look. The other party was lying on his stomach, and she could only vaguely see the outline. Indeed, there was some resemblance. But if it was Su Yu, then he had changed too much in just 2 months. Su Wenqing didn't know that the person on the ground was his nephew. He walked up to him, raised his eyebrows, and kicked him directly. Then, he glanced at Jing Yun Zhao and the others. "Are you all okay? Are you hurt?" "No." Jing Yun Zhao shook her head. "That's good." After Su Wenqing said that, he looked at Su Yuantek. "Big brother, this little thief came out of nowhere. How do you think we should deal with him? Big brother. Seeing Su Yuantek's angry look, Su Wanqing couldn't react. Yuanze. There must be some misunderstanding. I think Yu wanted to see his cousin, so he came here without permission. When he wakes up, listen to his explanation, okay? Shen, she said quickly. She was angry and disappointed, but more than that, she felt sorry for her son. Her son promised her that he would know his place, but she didn't expect him to be unable to hold back. But even so, he shouldn't have been beaten until he fainted, right? Also, although the servant didn't come in just now, she saw Yu lying on the ground from afar. Wouldn't the news spread like wildfire? What was even more infuriating was Su Wanqing's kick. He kicked her son in front of her. That was too much of a bully. You said this is Su Yu. When Su Wanqing heard this, he immediately took a step to the side and pointed at the person on the ground in disbelief. Jing Yunzhao was the same. His cold eyes were filled with astonishment. Even his two closest relatives were like this, not to mention Xiao Haiqing and Su Chu. Although the commotion was loud, Gan Jinchen, Tang Zihua, and Grandpa Gan were still upstairs and had not been awakened. Otherwise, there would be more people who would not be able to accept it. That's right, it's you, Su Yuantek's eyes were dark and gloomy. Su Jingji coldly snorted and sat down on the sofa with the help of his walking stick. He glanced at Jin's son on the ground and wished he could smash his head with a stick. The old man didn't say anything, but his expression didn't look good. Su Yuantek and Su Wanqing understood that he was furious. Zhao, tell us what happened. Although Su Yuantek didn't know the details, he had a rough idea. But he still asked first. Jing Yunzhao glanced at Xiao Haiqing. Xiao Haiqing was a little confused. She didn't expect that the person she hit was Jing Yunzhao's cousin. So, she felt very complicated. She felt that she was reckless, and this cousin was too much of a scammer. Actually, it's not a big deal. Seeing that the family's faces weren't looking too good, Xiao Haiqing still chose to be gentle. She played it down and said, young Master Su's sudden appearance scared me. I hit him on impulse. I hope Uncle Su can forgive me. After all, they were in the Su family, and he was Jing Yunzhao's cousin. She didn't know the Su family situation, so it was not good for her to say more. Everyone knew this. If it were Su Chu, she would say the same thing. But Jing Yunzhao couldn't stand others bullying her friends. So, she said directly, if cousin wants to see me, he can just say it. No matter what, I will go see him personally. I will even ask someone to invite him over. During the reception period, even second uncle doesn't come in casually. I can't understand why cousin would appear in the middle of the night. Chapter 994. With Jing Yunzhao's words, it could be considered as bringing this matter to the surface to discuss. Her gaze was as sharp as a knife as she glared at Shen Shi with hatred. She even looked at Su Yuantek with anger. Xiao Haiqing and the others were here. Since they were in the Su family, she had the responsibility to protect them. Moreover, even if Haiqing didn't say anything, she knew what had happened just now. Otherwise, Xiao Haiqing wouldn't have looked like she wanted to kill someone when she looked into the living room. Ever since the incident with James, Xiao Haiqing hated being touched by others. It was just like how she felt when she killed Xiao Weimin to protect her innocence in her previous life. Su Yu was just provoking Xiao Haiqing and challenging her bottom line. His guts were too big, and this was still in the Su family. This was in a house with so many people, and he dared to touch her friends. Xiao Haiqing didn't know how Su Yu and Jing Yunzhao's relationship was normally, so when she saw Jing Yunzhao helping her, she was more or less touched. Moreover, since Jing Yunzhao was on her side, it proved that she was speaking the truth. Thus, she opened her mouth and said, "Young Master Su wanted to pull me into the room just now and even brought a towel over to block my mouth. There was a weird smell on the towel. I suspect that it was smeared with medicine." This was a serious matter. She didn't want to say anything, but she felt wrong to be bullied by others. Now that Jing Yunzhao was there, she could speak up. When Su Yuantek heard this, he was so angry that his hair stood on end. He lifted Su up from the ground and looked again. There was a white towel under his body. He picked it up and smelled it. He was so angry that he threw it to the ground. The Su family didn't lack drugs. Of course, they didn't have aphrodisiacs, but they did have drugs with anesthetic effects. "Good, look at your son." Su Jingji wasn't angry. Instead, he laughed and glanced coldly at Su Yuantek and Shin Shi. Su Yuantek immediately knelt next to the old man and bent down. "I didn't teach him well. When you were young, you only knelt 3 times when you made a mistake. Whatever you taught, you would never do it again. However, do you remember how many times you knelt because of him?" Su Jingji laughed coldly. His eyes were filled with disappointment. The Su family's rules were strict. It was the father's fault for not teaching his son well. When Su Yuantek and Su Wenqing were young, they indeed knelt no more than 3 times. One of the times was when they were discovered helping Su Xianlong escape. They knelt to apologize to the old man. However, Su Yuantek knelt more than once for Su Yuantek. Although Su Yuantek made mistakes when he was young, he was still young and ignorant. It was fine to teach him. Naturally, he wouldn't blame Su Yuantek directly. However, if Su Yuantek didn't change, he would punish Su Yuantek. Su Yuantek had to reflect on himself. He didn't kneel to the old man many times, but he went to the family cemetery several times to kneel to the ancestors. This was especially true when he made a big mistake. "Dad, Yu is still young. He doesn't know anything. Don't be angry. You don't want to hurt your body." Since Su Yuantek knelt down, Shinshi naturally couldn't be spared. She hurriedly said carefully. At this time, Shinshi's face was pale. However, she didn't dare to panic too much. She looked at the old man carefully, afraid that the old man would throw him to some small island or some other place that she couldn't see in a fit of anger. She felt even more aggrieved. Jing Yunzhao and even her friends were really unlucky. Her son had just come back and was already being tortured like this. "Do as you see fit," the old man said directly. Angry? If he got angry every time because of this grandson of his, he would have died a long time ago. Su Yuantek frowned. He was also in a difficult position and didn't know how to deal with it. Chapter 995. Just as Su Yuantek was hesitating, Su Yu moved on the floor. When Shinshi saw this, she quickly rushed over and shook him awake. Before Su Yu could speak, Shinshi said, "You, are you okay? Did you come here to have a chat with your cousin? You brought this medicine here just to test her, right?" "Dad, Yuanza, it's my fault for teaching him wrong. Please let him go this time. I promise he won't do anything stupid in the future. He'll be obedient," Shinshi said quickly. She knew Su Yuantek too well. When this man was vicious, he didn't care about friendship at all. In the past, when his trusted friends suddenly betrayed him, he would act decisively. Now, he would do the same to his own son. She had calculated so much, but she didn't expect her son to make a mistake now. "I promise every time, and I'll be merciful every time." This kind of scourge hurts others and himself. What's the use of keeping him? Su Yuantek said angrily. His voice was cold and threatening. He suddenly made a decision. After saying that, he turned around and stared at Suyu. Suyu woke up from his coma and vaguely heard his mother say something. When he opened his eyes, he saw Jing Yunzhao fighting side by side with the woman he was holding just now. He immediately frowned and said, "Mom, this woman hit me. I must kill her." Su Yuantek shook his head and suddenly dragged him to the kitchen. Once he reached the kitchen, he locked the door with a bang. Shinshi tried to stop him, but she was already pushed to the side and fell to the ground. "Ah, it hurts. Mom, come and save me. Dad is crazy. Dad is crazy." Suddenly, there was a howl from the kitchen that sounded like a pig being slaughtered. It made people stand up with goosebumps. When Shinshi heard that, she lost her usual calmness. She rushed to the door and hit it hard. "Yuanza! Let go of him. Let go of my son." The old man didn't move. Su Wanqing didn't move either. Jing Yunzhao glanced at him, but she was just as indifferent. She still remembered what old Master Li had said when she met Li Xiaoyin's grandfather. With his status, if his descendants were to mess around and harm more than one person, he would have to do his duty. This duty also included family upbringing. Eldest uncle had a lot of power, and Suyu had used his name to do a lot of immoral things over the years. The Su family probably only knew about the things that had the least impact, and the more serious things might have been hidden. Yunzhao. Xiao Haiqing frowned and felt a little uneasy. After all, it was because of her. If something happened to Suyu, she would feel a little strange. After all, the Su family was very polite to her as a guest. She had only stayed for one night, and such a thing happened. No matter what, she felt a little guilty, even if she wasn't the one in the wrong. "It has nothing to do with you. Even without you, it would have happened sooner or later," Jing Yunzhao said. She was telling the truth. She and Suyu would have to face each other sooner or later. She had seen Suyu once. He was frivolous, impulsive, and had no bottom line. She had slapped him so many times in front of so many people in school. He would definitely bear a grudge. Even if he tolerated it for a while, it wouldn't be long before he did something unforgivable. Xiao Haiqing understood immediately. She secretly clicked her tongue and looked at Jing Yunzhao sympathetically. It was really bad luck to have such a cousin. She really didn't understand. Everyone in the Su family seemed to be principled and upright people. How did such an anomaly suddenly appear? But, looking at his skin color. Chapter 996. Xiao Haiqing hesitated for a moment, but she couldn't help feeling curious and a little angry. Finally, she got close to Jing Yunzhao's ear and whispered, "Yunzhao, that cousin of yours. Is he the son of your aunt and someone else?" Jing Yunzhao glanced at her with his eyes wide open. He was a little puzzled. Xiao Haiqing was a little embarrassed. She sneakily said, "His skin. Isn't his skin a little too dark? It should be imported from abroad, right?" The corner of Jing Yunzhao's mouth twitched fiercely. Next to them, Su Wanqing glanced at Xiao Haiqing. After a while, he turned his head away. It was unknown whether he heard it or not. "I think it should be because he was sent to Heizhou by my uncle. When I saw him before, he was not like this. His skin was very white and he looked good." Jing Yunzhao whispered back. Xiao Haiqing nodded and said in her heart, "No wonder." When she first saw Suyu, she was really scared, especially when he suddenly appeared in the middle of the night. At first glance, she thought he was a small gorilla. However, as the young master of the Su family, she didn't know why he went to Heizhou. His aesthetic standards were a little too heavy. That was fine, but he knew that she looked scary, yet he still dared to touch her. At this time, there were a lot of mournful sounds coming from the kitchen. Outside, Shunshi was shouting until her throat was broken. Tears flowed down her face. It was a heart-wrenching sight. Next to Jing Yunzhao, Suchu was shocked. She stood behind and frowned. She pulled Jing Yunzhao's arm, but she didn't interrupt. Not long after, the kitchen door opened and Su Yuanze walked in. When everyone saw him, they could only see that his clothes were stained with blood. It was a ghastly sight. Even Jing Yunzhao was a little shocked. How are you? Hang in there. Mom will find a doctor. Tears streamed down Shunshi's face as she rushed to the landline. Don't look for a doctor. Su Yuantek said coldly, if he can't control his feet, I'll help him. Yuanze. You cut his hamstring. Shunshi's body twitched. I beg you, save him. Do you want him to be a cripple for the rest of his life? His hamstring had been cut, and he might even have to sit in a wheelchair in the future. However, it was not too late now. As long as the surgery was done quickly to reconnect the hamstring, there was still a possibility of recovery. Although there would be sequelae, it was better than being a cripple. Shunshi, don't challenge my bottom line. Today, he couldn't control his lower body and dared to lay his hands on his sister's guest. What else can he do in the future? In the past, when he harmed others outside, as his father, how many times did I have to clean up his mess for him? How many people had compensated? Our Su family has accumulated thousands of years of good karma. We can't let him ruin it all. In the past, I only wanted to teach him a lesson. From today onwards, if he does something he shouldn't do, I will take his life bit by bit and send him back to reincarnate. Su Yuantek's roar was very loud. It was estimated that Grandpa Gon, who was upstairs, would wake up soon. Shunshi's whole body trembled. She reached out to grab Su Yuantek's hand and slowly retracted it. Yunzhao, Aunt Shen is begging you. Send you to get his legs treated, okay? Her voice was low and her eyes were flickering. Her whole body was like a willow in the wind, swaying weakly. Jing Yunzhao looked up, but his eyes were cold and resolute. Since you did it, you should admit it. The punishment should not be light. Moreover, in my opinion, the Su family should not be left alive. Jing Yunzhao said quietly. Chapter 997. She carried the family heirloom of the Jing family with her. Ancestor Jing He, who appeared in the space that year, also said that only his descendants could open the space. Therefore, after thinking about it, Jing He should be the common ancestor of the Su and Jing families. Since she bore the inheritance of the ancestor, she had the responsibility to clean up the family for him. In the past, she thought that since Su Yu was her uncle's son, she should let Su Yu go even if she had to deal with Shunshi. However, in terms of the small family, it was indeed appropriate, but in terms of the 1,000-year-old inheritance, it was impossible. The eldest son and eldest grandson represented a different meaning in a family like the Su family. At this moment, she even understood why her grandfather was so indifferent to this grandson. On the one hand, it was indeed because he was disappointing and didn't like him, but the most important thing was that he could only judge clearly from afar. Knowing that Su Yu's character was not right and yet still spoiled him, he would not be able to treat the inheritance of the Su family with a fair attitude in the future. In the future, if Su Yu was allowed to inherit the family business, it would only tarnish the Su family's reputation. Now, her grandfather didn't say anything and just looked on coldly. Everything was reasonable. Yunzhao. Please. Shunshi's pupils shrank, and she suddenly grabbed Jing Yunzhao's arms with force. As long as she spoke, Su Yuantek would definitely listen, and so would the others. Aunt Shin, have you ever thought about what would happen if my friend didn't have the ability to protect himself? Jing Yunzhao sneered and reached out to pull Shinchi's hand away. She said, he brought the medicine. Based on this, he deserved to die. He's not dead yet. If it weren't for the fact that he was my uncle's son, I would have strangled him myself. After that, Shinchi fell to the ground, her clenched fists trembling. She couldn't believe that her son was going to be crippled like this. It was her fault. She should have sent someone to watch over her son. She knew that he had been in Heizhou for a long time and was very eager. She knew that he was impulsive. She had tolerated Jing Yunzhao for a long time. Every time, she didn't want to have a direct confrontation with her, but the result was. It was one thing for her to force her son to go to Heizhou, but now that he had finally returned, she had caused his hamstring to be severed. I know, Yu deserves it. The room was quiet. The sound of Grandpa Gon's footsteps gradually grew louder. She suddenly opened her mouth and said, Miss Xiao, I'm sorry. Xiao Haiqing furrowed her brows. Su Wenqing and the others also had strange expressions on their faces. This was the reason why he didn't like his sister-in-law. Although she appeared very magnanimous at the moment, it was really not in line with human nature. Xiao Haiqing glanced at Jing Yunzhao and did not respond to Shinchi's words. Shinchi got up from the ground and walked to the kitchen. She supported Su Yu, who had fainted from the pain, with her whole body and left the house step by step. Su Yuantek turned his head to the side, but his expression was still firm and disappointed. Everyone had different expressions. After all, they were members of the Su family. None of them felt good about using such a heavy hand, but they knew that they deserved it. Miss Xiao, I'm really sorry. It looks like you're going out, right? I'll ask Yuanqing to send you there. Su Yuantek's voice was tired, but his gaze when looking at Xiao Haiqing did not blame or implicate her. This was because he knew clearly that if Xiao Haiqing was not in the living room just now, his son could also find her room and even Su Chu and Jing Yunzhao's rooms. This was the Su family. Su Yu was very clear about the structure of the family. As long as he asked the servants, he could accurately know which room each of them lived in. He was angry not only because he dared to bully Jing Yunzhao's guests, but also because his son might have placed his thoughts on Jing Yunzhao. Chapter 998. Su Yuanze seemed to have lost all his energy. It was rare for Su Yuanqing to not go against his big brother's wishes. He nodded obediently and agreed to be the driver. When Grandpa Gon came downstairs, he saw that there were traces of blood in the living room. He was surprised, but he had lived for a long time, so he restrained his curiosity and didn't ask. They went back to their own homes. Xiao Haiqing had a simple breakfast and was escorted out by Su Wenqing. Su Chu still had some lingering fear. She quickly hugged Jing Yunzhao's arm and went upstairs. I was scared to death just now. I thought your uncle was going to kill Su Yu. Su Chu said softly after they entered the house. Even a vicious tiger won't eat its cubs. How could it kill someone? Jing Yunzhao comforted her and said, I invited you to be my guests. I didn't expect such a thing to happen. I'm sorry. It's okay. Who doesn't have a troublesome situation? Besides, the Su family has a big business, but other than Su Yu, everyone else is very nice. Uncle Su and second Uncle Su are also very polite to us. I'm quite touched. Su Chu said sincerely. Su Chu was one of Jing Yunzhao's few friends. She was the most open-minded. She didn't have high expectations, lived a simple life, and had a likable personality. She was kind but not too naive. She didn't care about anything too much, so she had an easy life. She and Xiao Haiqing belonged to the other category. Oh right, you rejected Auntie Shin so harshly just now. She should hate you, right? Suchu asked again. Then from your point of view, was her reaction just now hateful or not? Jing Yunzhao poured her a cup of water to help her calm her nerves and continued to ask. Suchu thought for a while, and her expression was strange. At first, I thought she would hate you. Let's put it this way. If I did something wrong and got my legs broken, even if my parents thought I was wrong, they would still be mad and angry. They would treat the person who hurt me as their enemy. However, Auntie Shin didn't. She didn't explode. It was as if she swallowed her anger. It's too strange. If you can see that it's strange, then there must be a problem. Jing Yunzhao lay on the bed and leaned against the back of the chair. He continued, Shunshi is a person who cares about her position as Mrs. Su. She wouldn't allow herself to make any mistakes that would affect her position. Even if she was angry, she wouldn't explode in front of the Su family, especially in front of Uncle. Even if her son's legs were broken. But that's all she did. She was the one who cared most for her son, but that's all, herself. She cared too much about her image. It was as if she was afraid that others would think she was a shrew when she cried. So, no matter when and where, she had to maintain a gentle appearance. It was quite ironic. But when he said that, Jing Yunzhao suddenly remembered that Shinxi's habit might be related to her family background. Shinxi and Aunt Tong were sisters. However, Shinxi didn't really love Shintong. She even secretly played tricks on Shintong. It wasn't as simple as sisters being at odds. It was more like there was a grudge between them. They had the same family background, but Shintong was already a household name when she was in her teens. Her appearance on the screen was still unforgettable. Shinxi was older, but she was only Shintong's assistant. Comparing them, she probably felt uncomfortable. Later, she suddenly married Uncle, who was extremely outstanding more than 20 years ago. She came into contact with a completely different level. So, was that why she was so extreme? Jing Yunzhao suddenly smiled. His eyes were cold. The light shining from them was even brighter than the stars outside. Chapter 999. All this time, she had no idea what Shinxi cared about. But now, she completely understood. It wasn't eldest uncle or Su Yu. It wasn't even the position of Mrs. Su. To be precise, it was her reputation. What she wanted was attention, the admiration of others, and the envious attitude of others. If she could receive everyone's support, care, and praise for leaving the Su family, Shinxi might not refuse. At this moment, Suchu pursed her lips. She wanted to say something, but she swallowed her words. Ever since she came to the Su family, she felt that Jing Yunzhao seemed to have ill intentions towards Shinxi. Every time she saw Shinxi, her expression would become extremely cold, just like when she saw Qiao Hongye and the others. She also wanted to open her mouth and ask, but after thinking about it, she rejected that idea. Even if she asked, she wouldn't be able to help. She would even feel anxious. At this moment, it was enough to know that she was on guard against Shinxi. There was no need to know too much. Otherwise, if she accidentally revealed it in front of Shinxi, it might even invite trouble. As she thought about it, Suchu entered the dreamland again. However, at this moment, Shinxi couldn't fall asleep. She hugged her unconscious son and bit her lip, her eyes filled with hatred. The bleeding on his legs had already been stopped. It was a pity that no one in the entire Su family came to help her. No one even dared to. When Jing Yunzhao didn't appear, although Yu would be punished, it wouldn't be so serious. She also wouldn't be so embarrassed every 2 to 3 days, for the sake of staying in the Su family, for the sake of her son, and for the sake of the future, she was restrained. Remove his bandages and apply new medicine. As she was thinking, Su Yuantek appeared behind her and threw a jade bottle. Shi was shocked, but hope immediately rose in her heart. Yuanze, this, 7 Extremes ointment. Su Yuantek was expressionless. Extreme skin, extreme flesh, extreme bone, extreme tendon, extreme meridian, extreme qi, extreme life and death. This item was left behind by the old ancestor and was extremely rare. If it was used on the tendons, then the tendons would never be connected again. Even the damaged flesh around it would recover at an extremely slow rate. It was extremely torturous. In fact, no matter where this ointment was applied, it would have an absolute destructive effect. Of course, as long as it did not stop the person from breathing or dying, it would have certain benefits for other things. For example, although the growth of meat was slow, it would not fester or inflame. It could, to a certain extent, prevent some infectious diseases from spreading throughout the body. Therefore, this ointment was used to treat illnesses. Shi's expression changed. She had never heard of this ointment, but the name seemed to be, "Why don't we send her to the hospital now?" She asked tentatively. "Hospital or death, you choose." Su Yuantek said coldly, "Shi, you know very well in your heart that this bastard is not only interested in Zhao's friends. He has the guts to do such a thing at home. He obviously took Zhao into consideration." Jing Yunzhao was not only the daughter of his sister, Su Xianlan, but also had an even more important identity. If it involved the inheritance of the Jing and Su family, nothing must happen. Not to mention crippling his own son, even if he had to kill him, as long as he could exchange the inheritance of the Jing and Su family's medical skills and pharmaceutical skills, he would not hesitate to do so. This inheritance could be exchanged for many lives. Shi held the bottle tightly and did not speak. However, under Su Yuantek's gaze, she still loosened the bandage wrapped around Su Yu's wound with trembling hands and applied the ointment. She knew that once she applied the ointment, there would be no hope for her son's leg. A few days later, the Su family was in a joyous mood. The servants were busy, and everything was luxurious and stylish. The sweet shop and the smell of alcohol permeated the air, making people deeply intoxicated. She had a broad smile on her face as she entertained the guests one by one. She had the elegance of a mistress of a family. Chapter 1000. Jing Yunzhao was wearing a white gown. The gown was mainly slim fit, and the inner layer was an inch away from her knees. The material was soft, like the softness of flower petals. There was a phoenix pattern embroidered on it, making the light material look more dignified and dignified. The outer layer was covered with a layer of mist-like gauze, and the top of the gauze was embroidered with patterns, which fitted the inner layer and gave the gown a three-dimensional feel. The makeup artist was fiddling with her hair, and Jing Yunzhao was wearing headphones. She held her phone in her hand and listened to the person on the other end of the phone. After a few days of investigation, almost all the media companies that Fan Liqin had invested in had been sorted out. Most of the news released by that media company were suspected of exaggeration, and there was one incident that was more serious. Previously, it had caused a big reaction in front of the public. "Chief Jing, it's like this. Half a year ago, the mother of a female student suddenly collapsed in front of a store under Boss Fan's company. The exact reason was that the mother had bought something from this store that had a quality problem. After many failed negotiations, she went to cause trouble. In the end, she was pushed and scolded by the store's staff, which caused her illness to act up. The staff thought she was faking it and didn't save her in time, which ultimately led to her death. After the mother's death, compensation was supposed to be paid, but the female student's father demanded an exorbitant price. In the end, Fan Liqin decided to bite back. Fan Liqin used the media company that he had invested in to fabricate a story, saying that the female student was competitive and forced her mother to buy expensive electronic products at the store's entrance. When her mother refused, she yelled and scolded her, which ultimately angered her mother to death. At the time, public opinion was in an uproar, and there was a lot of scolding online. The girl was ostracized by everyone because of this, and her father had no choice but to compromise and take a small sum of money. He even promoted Fan Liqin's company's products, saying that the money was not compensation but a gift. The girl had been wronged, and in the end, she couldn't take it anymore and committed suicide by cutting her wrists. However, the fact that she had passed away was not revealed, and most of the people who scolded her had no idea that she was dead. There's also his father. After his daughter died, he regretted it and wanted to return the money. He also asked Fan Liqin's company to give him an explanation. However, he couldn't complain because he had already borrowed the money from before. No one believed him at all. They even thought that he was greedy. Over the phone, Songwon briefly told Jing Yunzhao the truth that they had found. Apart from this matter, there were actually other things that made people extremely angry. However, some of them were from a long time ago, and some of them were just exaggerated. Unlike this one, it was truly related to Fan Liqin, and it even involved a life. It could be said that the mother and daughter had died because of Fan Liqin. After Jing Yunzhao heard this, he felt a little emotional. Suicide. It was too silly. If she was still alive, she would have the next few decades to find out the truth and let the public prove her innocence. But if she was dead, people might say that she deserved to die. Besides, there were still enemies around. Even if they had to waste time, they had to waste time until the day their enemies died. Otherwise, how could they rest in peace? Find a media company with a conscience in the industry and send over the concrete evidence that you have collected. I'll arrange the rest. This time, I'll have to trouble you guys, Jing Yunzhao said simply. It's no trouble at all. It's just that there are more and more things that we need to investigate, but we're running out of manpower. Chief Jing, I want to recruit people. And there are some trustworthy candidates. Do you want to consider them? Songwon said again. Initially, he had only agreed to do this because he lacked money. But later, he found that hacking into various websites to steal information was quite interesting. Moreover, Jing Yunzhao paid him quite a lot. The few of them who were responsible for investigating each other's information had their own duties, but their relationship was getting better and better. If nothing unexpected happened, he also hoped to continue working for Jing Yunzhao in the future. Chapter 1001. These few people who were proficient in computers, tracking, and all kinds of equipment were also very important to Jing Yunzhao. They could be used in other areas in the future. Therefore, when Songwon mentioned it, Jing Yunzhao agreed. You'll be in charge. Send me the candidates later, Jing Yunzhao said again. The person on the other end of the phone was overjoyed and nodded repeatedly. After hanging up Songwon's call, Jing Yunzhao began to contact Pak Yuan again and explained the situation. Pak Yuan was a smart person and knew how to make use of this situation. Relying on the media alone was obviously not enough. According to her, she wanted to add fuel to the fire. The water army was a part of it. In addition, she wanted to expose Fan Liqin's other problems with the company. Fan Liqin had been in the industry for so long, it was impossible for the products he produced not to have any problems. Even if it was a small mistake, she wanted to magnify it. Then, she would fiercely publicize his usual behavior to make him suffer. Of course, that was not all. Because of today's birthday banquet, she had specially asked her uncle to invite Boss Fan to come. The makeup artists behind Jing Yunzhao looked at each other. They were very curious about Miss Jing, who had suddenly appeared. From waking up early in the morning until now, Miss Jing had not hung up the phone. It was as if she was instructing someone to do something. It sounded very mysterious. This Miss Jing is really beautiful. Could she be Mayor Su's illegitimate daughter? Outside the door, someone whispered softly. Jing Yunzhao had just taken off her earpiece when she heard it clearly. Don't talk nonsense. This is Mayor Su's niece. I heard that Mayor Su's younger sister passed away. This niece has been wandering outside and was just found not long ago. His niece is so ostentatious. She's so lucky to have met an uncle like Mayor Su. When a man achieves the Tao, even his chickens and dogs will ascend to heaven. Wasn't I styling her friend just now? That girl really hasn't seen the world. She can't take her eyes off beautiful things. How funny. Jing Yunzhao closed his eyes and let the stylist do whatever she wanted. But at this time, when he heard that the people outside were still talking about Su Chu, his face suddenly turned cold. He raised his eyes. The stylist behind him was shocked when she saw his cold face in the mirror. Miss Jing, did I hurt your hair? The stylist asked carefully. The people outside are so noisy. Throw them out, Jing Yunzhao said directly. The servant, who had been helping out at the side, was stunned when she heard this. Is there anyone outside the door? Miss Biao, we didn't hear anything. Go out and have a look. Put an end to such gossipy people coming to the Su family in the future. Jing Yunzhao's voice was cold, but he still insisted. Since the words were said so clearly, the servant immediately walked over and opened the door to take a look. Sure enough, she saw the other two stylists outside looking curiously into the room. After being discovered, their expressions were strange and very nervous. This time, the Su family invited 2 or 3 styling teams. Jing Yunzhao, Su Chu, and Xiao Haiqing all specially dressed up. Were you guys talking just now? Although the servant didn't hear it, she still asked according to Jing Yunzhao's intention. The other party was shocked when she heard this, and her face turned pale immediately. Their voices were clearly very soft. Could it be that they heard it? The two of them stared at each other without saying a word. This maid was someone who had been following Jing Yunzhao around to take care of her recently. She was very smart. Seeing their reactions, she knew that it was true. Her face instantly turned cold. Please leave, you don't need to do the rest of the work. Chapter 1002. The 2 makeup artists outside the door immediately blushed when they heard that. After thinking about it again, they felt that their words shouldn't have been heard, so they couldn't help but feel a little angry. Why did you let us go? We were just standing here for a while, one of them said guiltily. One of them said with a guilty conscience. As he spoke, he looked around the room and only saw the side of Jing Yunzhao's face. Suddenly, he felt that she looked familiar. After a while, his eyes lit up and he hurriedly shouted, You're Jing Yunzhao, right? I'm your cousin. Jing Yunzhao heard and turned around. The makeup artist outside the door became even more excited. It's really you. She raised her hand to stop the person beside her and walked towards the door. When she looked at this woman, she felt that she was a little unfamiliar. Who are you? Jing Yunzhao's expression was cold. She had a noble aura around her and her tone was a little imposing. The 2 or 3 waves of makeup artists that came today were not together, so other than the few people in the room, Jing Yunzhao hadn't seen anyone else. I'm your cousin. Have you forgotten? I even went to your house when you were young. At that time, I was drooling when I saw me eating snacks. However, I'm a few years older than you and have lived in the capital for a few years. There was only one time when I went to your school to look for Hongya and saw you from afar. At that time, I thought that you looked alright, so I remembered you," the other party continued excitedly. Jing Yunzhao's eyes narrowed. So it was a relative of the Qiao family. And after hearing what she said, she really did have some recollection of her. She could still remember her childhood quite clearly. This woman should be Qiao Weiman's cousin's daughter, and they could be considered distant relatives. However, because they lived in the same small town, they met more often when they were young. Qiao Hongya liked to follow behind this cousin's butt and pester her. At that time, whenever the two of them ate, she would watch from the side. At that time, she was only 4 or 5 years old. Naturally, she was very greedy. However, she was stubborn since she was young, so she probably didn't drool. However, a few years later, this cousin went to the capital to attend university. At that time, the Qiao family's relatives all praised her and said that she was promising. At that time, Yi Qin often nagged in front of her and Qiao Hongya. After that, she never saw this person again. So she couldn't recognize her. Thinking about it, he recalled that her surname was Song, but he had no recollection of her name. At this time, many people in the room were looking at Jing Yunzhao. Some were even curious and gossipy. After all, a young lady living outside met a relative in distress. Something should happen. Please leave. Jing Yunzhao turned around and said mercilessly. Yunzhao. I'm your cousin, I'm really your cousin. You used to live in Ningxiang town. When you were young, you looked sallow and emaciated. If it wasn't for my aunt who picked you up, you would have died. By the way, although I haven't been back for a long time, I heard that your father's leg is crippled and your sister is missing. Your father is the only one at home. He can't even eat. Life is so hard. Now that you've made a name for yourself, you've become the daughter of the Su family's cousin. Quickly go back and bring your father here to enjoy his life. The servant pushed and shoved her away. The woman was also a little angry in her heart, so she blurted out everything. When the people beside her heard this, their expressions were very interesting. They started to size up Jing Yunzhao, the daughter of a rich family. If they didn't hear about her past, everyone would probably think that she was born into a prestigious family. Throw him out. Don't make me say it again. Jing Yunzhao said coldly. Immediately, that person was dragged out. With a bang, the door was tightly shut. Chapter 1003. Jing Yunzhao was not affected much. After all, she was just an insignificant outsider. However, when the others saw that she was so merciless to her former relatives, they felt a little nervous and hurriedly and carefully helped her deal with the makeup on her face. The room suddenly became extremely quiet. Previously, they would praise her from time to time, but now, no one dared to touch her. Jing Yunzhao's appearance was outstanding. To her, these clothes and makeup were just embellishments. Thus, her makeup wasn't very heavy, but she was still extremely dazzling. With this temperament, no one would be able to steal away her radiance. After a while, Su Chu and Xiao Haiqing were ready and appeared in front of her. Su Chu was wearing a light pink dress, which was not exaggerated. Xiao Haiqing's peach blossom eyes were already a little charming. If she wore red, she would look more mature. After all, she was still young, so she deliberately restrained herself and chose a light blue dress. Her hair was tied up. It was not very seductive, but it was not too pure either. It was very suitable for her current temperament. It's your birthday party. Is it inappropriate for the two of us to dress so beautifully? Xiao Haiqing tugged at her clothes and frowned. What's inappropriate about it? The other women who came today should be dressed more delicately than the two of you. Jing Yunzhao smiled and spoke the truth. First uncle rarely held private parties. Every time he attended such events, it was almost for work. This time, it was her birthday party, so there would definitely be a lot of young people coming. On the one hand, there would be people who wanted to make friends with her. On the other hand, second uncle was also back. He was a golden bachelor, so he would attract more bees and butterflies. Su Chu and Xiao Haiqing were just not used to this kind of dress, but they would soon know that the two of them were already very low-key. They were even the same as the main character of her party. It was not extravagant at all. Just as Jing Yunzhao said, at this time, there were many people coming in. The Su family was decorated like a fairyland. It was extremely beautiful. The place where the banquet was held was even more luxurious, and the fragrance of the banquet was overwhelming. The iron gate a few hundred meters away was wide open. Before entering, he could already feel the grandeur of this old house. Fan Liqin walked in with a girl. His face was full of smiles, and his pair of triangular eyes looked around. When he saw someone he knew, he immediately greeted them. Everyone knew that Su Yuantek was somewhat aloof and favored Confucian merchants, and the guests he was familiar with were also of high status. Although Fan Liqin had a lot of assets, he rarely did charity work. He was also more of a profiteer, and there was still a gap between him and a real wealthy family. With Su Yuantek's eyesight, it was almost impossible to invite him over. Wei Wei, if you see Mayor Su's niece later, you must be smart. You two are about the same age, so it's best to make friends with her, okay? Fan Liqin said to his daughter as he walked. Fan Weiwei was 20 years old this year. She was quite sweet and looked like a high school student. Got it, Dad. Fan Weiwei hurriedly replied with a somewhat stiff smile on her face. She didn't know how many times she had to participate in this kind of occasion every year. She wasn't a boy, and her mother didn't give birth to a younger brother. At home, she often had to look at her father's face. When she thought of her mother, Fan Weiwei's heart felt a bit sour. In this day and age, there was probably no one who could be as timid as her mother. Not only did she have to listen to her father's words, she even had to raise his two illegitimate children for him. In addition to her two younger brothers, who knew how many other illegitimate sisters she had. Chapter 1004. Fan Liqin brought his daughter along as if he was promoting a product. He kept introducing his daughter to everyone with a smile. Fortunately, most of the guests who came in person today were their sons, nephews, and nieces. They were all quite young, so it wasn't particularly awkward. Logically speaking, Su Yuantek would introduce Jing Yunzhao to everyone after the banquet, but it was still early. She didn't even know if Hua Tianxian and Ren Xingyue had arrived yet, so she went outside with Xiao Haiqing and Su Chu after her makeup was done. There are so many people. Su Chu exclaimed. She picked up a glass of fruit wine and smelled it. Suddenly, she smacked her lips in an exaggerated manner. I know this smell. It's from Brother Bai's company. Dog nose. Xiao Haiqing deliberately laughed. That's because only the wine from Brother Bai's company smells so good. The wine recipe was even provided by my cousin. Su Chu smiled proudly, her eyes shining like stars. Jing Yunzhao couldn't help but be happy. He said, I'll bring you to meet my two roommates. Aren't there three? Xiao Haiqing didn't understand. One of them is in another province. Her parents and older brother are watching her closely, so she can't come, Jing Yunzhao explained. Xiao Haiqing nodded. She had met one of Jing Yunzhao's three friends before. She knew that the girl was from a rich family with just one look. She was also straightforward. Even though she had a bit of arrogance around her, she treated people well. Su Chu was very curious about everything around Jing Yunzhao. Now that she heard that she had a new friend, she was overjoyed and followed along. She didn't plan to go anywhere else by herself. As for Gan Jinchen and Tang Zihua, the two boys had already mixed in with the crowd. Even after seeing the three of them from afar, they didn't follow them. After searching for a while in the crowd, Jing Yunzhao finally found Hua Tianxian and Ren Xingyue. The outside of the main building wasn't an outdoor setting, so it was very warm. However, Jing Yunzhao and Xiao Haiqing still had a fluffy shawl draped over their shoulders. It was beautiful and warm. Hua Tianxian, on the other hand, looked very cool. It almost touched the ground. She wore 10-centimeter high heels and was dressed in the same color as Jing Yunzhao. She looked very elegant and arrogant. Su Chu saw this and couldn't help but be a little surprised. This person was too arrogant. As for Ren Xingyue beside him, she was from the Dark Major. She was wearing very simple clothes without any exaggeration. She was so low-key that no one would be able to discover her. Apart from that, there were also two male elders beside her. They should be Hua Tianxian's father and Ren Xingyue's uncle. Jing Yunzhao immediately went up to greet them. Fan Liqin, who was behind him, caught a glimpse of Jing Yunzhao. His eyes darkened. He pulled an employee over and asked, "Who are those girls?" "Them. They're our Mrs.'s former friends." The employee roughly replied. "Friends? Former friends? Didn't your miss lead a wandering life in the past?" Fan Liqin asked again. "Yes, we got to know each other back then." The employee immediately nodded. Fan Liqin loosened his grip and grinned. He had thought that the little girl had some ability. It turned out that she was just a country bumpkin from a small place. Previously, she had relied on Pak Yuan to embarrass him. This time, since this miss from the Su family had suddenly jumped onto a branch, she probably didn't remember the bitter days of the past. Moreover, when they were so busy, they wouldn't care about them at all. Even if they embarrassed her later, no one would stand up for her. After all, who would waste their breath on a wild girl? Chapter 1005. As Fan Liqin thought of this, a gloating expression appeared on his face, and his mood became much better. When his daughter saw her father acting like this, her heart sank. She casually guessed that her father must be thinking of some crooked ideas at this time. Looking at the way he looked at those girls just now, it was as if he wanted to eat them alive. This was the Su family, and he wasn't afraid of causing trouble. However, even if he did cause trouble, as his daughter, she would not sympathize with him. She would even be happy to see such a scene. She and her mother lived too hard. Her father was the man they hated the most. They could not wait for him to go bankrupt and lose his financial power. Then, her mother would be able to divorce easily. Even if she did not have money, it would be better for her to live like this. At this moment, Jing Yunzhao and Hua Tianxian met. Hua Tianxian glanced at her and revealed a somewhat angry attitude. "How is it? I should be able to win against you with my outfit today, right? This stinky woman." She did not say that she was the daughter of the Su family. When she first found out that her father wanted to bring her to the Su family, she wanted to refuse. After all, she already had an appointment with Jing Yunzhao. Who knew that Jing Yunzhao would suddenly call and tell the Su family that this banquet was for her? "Of course you win." Jing Yunzhao could not help but laugh as she said this. She did not tell Hua Tianxian at first because she thought that Hua Tianxian would find out sooner or later. Moreover, if she told Hua Tianxian in advance, she was afraid that her parents would instruct her for a few days. Her real intention was just to let them come. Besides, she also wanted to tease them a little. Usually, it was Hua Tianxian who recklessly arranged all kinds of things, so today she returned the favor. All right, don't coax me. Hua Tianxian rolled her eyes and huffed angrily. Jing Yunzhao had an air of nobility about her. This was something he could feel from the first day he saw her. The clothes she was wearing today were even more exquisite. Even though they weren't gorgeous, they perfectly complemented her skin and temperament, making her look perfect without a single flaw. As for herself, of course, she was also very beautiful. There was no problem for her to crush 90% of the women present. However, she lost in terms of appearance. Are you angry? Jing Yunzhao asked with a smile. You are the birthday boy today, how would I dare to be angry with you? Hua Tianxian glanced at her and laughed. In the next moment, she scanned her from head to toe. But you really had a hard time keeping it from us. Mayor Su's niece. Who doesn't know that Mayor Su doesn't have a daughter? He must treat you like his own daughter, right? Also, second young master of the Su family, do you know how many women outside want to catch his eye? I believe that as long as your identity is revealed today, men and women will want to get close to you. The men will want to win your favor, and the women will want to become second young master Su's woman through you. Hua Tianxian secretly clicked her tongue. When she was young, her family was very well off. Her family was more knowledgeable about the affairs of the upper class. Sometimes, her parents would nag in her ears, so she knew a little more. They said that the Su family was not as simple as it seemed on the surface. Mayor Su's official position was gradually promoted, and it was not overnight. However, a long time ago, the Su family had a place in Jingdu, but it was more mysterious. Therefore, when she heard that half of Jing Yunzhao's blood was from the Su family, she was surprised and pleasantly surprised. Her friend came from a good family, and she was sincerely happy for her. However, she was also a little selfish. Her parents were both businessmen, and she could not avoid it in the future. Of course, she was not a snob. It was just that her friend happened to come from a good family. If Jing Yunzhao's family was very ordinary, her attitude would not have changed much. Chapter 1006. Hua Tianxian's father and Ren Xinyue's uncle were chatting with other people, so they did not hear them. After a while, they walked over and were surprised to see a few unfamiliar girls. These are. Hua Tianxian's dad was careful and polite. Jing Yunzhao, in particular, looked a little familiar. Now that he thought about it, she seemed to have been standing with President Bai during the charity fundraiser. Many people were curious about her identity at that time. They are my and Xinyue's classmates, Hua Tianxian said bluntly. Hua Tianxian was clear in her heart that the moment she exposed Jing Yunzhao's identity and attracted the attention of others, they wouldn't have the time to themselves anymore. She herself had experienced this kind of situation countless times, so she was very clear on the pressure of being under the gaze of tens of thousands of people. Mayor Su would introduce her to other people later anyway. There were only a few girls here, so it was better to keep a low profile for now. Hua Tianxian did not ask any more questions when he heard this, but his attitude was still very friendly. Compared to Ren Xinyue's uncle, Uncle Zhou, he was more shrewd and careful. When the girls met, Hua Tianxian's dad and President Zhou did not force them to stay by their side, especially Ren Xinyue's uncle, Zhou Minghai. He never thought that he would have the opportunity to attend the Su family's banquet. When he received the invitation card, he even thought that someone had sent it by mistake. He had been a little nervous. Now that he was here, not many people wanted to chat with him, so he could only brace himself. It was not easy for his niece to be friends with the Hua family's daughter. He could also use this opportunity to build a relationship with President Hua and not be embarrassed by himself. After the two adults left, Jing Yunzhao introduced herself to each other and they got to know each other better. After all, they were all young people of the same age. They were easy to get along with, so they quickly got along well with each other. Ren Xingyue remembered that Jing Yunzhao had said that she would treat her uncle's illness, so she asked, Yunzhao, you saw my uncle just now. Can you tell his physical condition from his appearance? Jing Yunzhao thought for a moment and said, the symptoms I can see from his appearance are superficial, but I can be sure that there is something wrong with his body. His face is pale and he looks weak. His footsteps are a little lighter than a normal person's. However, I still need to check his pulse to know his exact condition. After the banquet ends, you can stay a little longer. I will write a prescription for your uncle. Hua Tianxian and Ren Xingyue had never seen Jing Yunzhao treat patients, so even now, they still had their doubts. But since she had said that, they could not immediately refute her. But since she had said so, they did not question as words. They stood in front of a row of desserts, chatting and laughing. After a while, Fan Liqin walked over with his daughter. Fan Liqin had good eyesight. He recognized Hua Tianxian. Although he was not familiar with the little girl that Zhou Minghai had brought, she was not a threat. The Zhou family was not presentable at all. He did not know what kind of luck they had to have come here. Therefore, the only thing that could make him a little wary was the Hua Corporation. However, Hua's jewelry and the company that he ran were two completely different industries. President Hua was usually so shrewd that he was a little snobbish. Presumably, his daughter was the same. Miss Hua. Fan Liqin called out from behind. Hua Tianxian turned her head when she heard the voice. When she saw the man in front of her, she thought for a moment and said, Boss Fan. Chapter 1007. When Fan Liqin heard Hua Tianxian call out his surname, his face bloomed with joy. His expression was as gentle as if he was looking at a junior. After looking at her a few more times, he opened his mouth and said, I haven't seen Miss Hua in a while. Girls really change 18 times between childhood and womanhood. The more you change, the prettier you become. Today, you look like a fairy. You're really beautiful. The sudden compliment made Hua Tianxian smile politely. She didn't have any other skills, but her ability to read people was something few people could compare to. Logically speaking, she wasn't familiar with Boss Fan. Even her parents didn't have any interest in him. When they met, they should have just nodded and greeted each other. Now that he had taken the initiative to say such nice words, he definitely didn't have any good intentions. However, even if she knew what Boss Fan was planning, she wouldn't say it out loud. Instead, she would be more polite. Boss Fan is too kind. Just now, I thought I was stealing the limelight. As Hua Tianxian spoke, she winked at Jing Yunzhao. The two of them were friends. Their glances were meant to tease each other. However, Fan Liqin didn't see it that way. When it came to stealing the limelight, Jing Yunzhao was even worse. Her clothes were exquisitely made. With one look, one could tell that it wasn't cheap. On top of that, the style matched her body, making her look very noble and eye-catching. Perhaps Miss Hua's words just now were meant to mock her. With this thought, Fan Liqin's heart relaxed a little. It seemed that although they were standing together, their relationship wasn't good. Miss Hua is born with a noble aura. No matter what she wears, it's the same. However, there are some people who aren't like that. Miss Jing, I heard that you were friends with the young miss that the Su family brought back. You're really lucky to have a friend like that. But I think that no matter how much Mayor Su indulges his niece, he wouldn't let that child get along with someone like you who relies on her looks to make a living. Don't you think so? Fan Liqin warned before he turned to Hua Tianxian and said, Miss Hua, I've met President Hua a few times before, so as an elder, I'm here to remind you that the woman beside you isn't exactly clean. You should keep your distance. As soon as he said this, Hua Tianxian glanced at Jing Yunzhao. She finally knew why Fan Liqin wanted to talk to her. However, wasn't this Fan guy a little too stupid? Everyone knew that Mayor Su's niece was an 18-year-old girl, so most people would restrain themselves a little, so as not to offend her when they met the main character. Boss Fan, did Mayor Su personally invite you here? Hua Tianxian couldn't help but ask. Even though she didn't understand this director Fan in front of her, she could tell that this person was arrogant and arrogant. Even though he was talking bad about Jing Yunzhao, the way he looked at her was filled with lust. It was obvious that he was a good thing. If she could see through this, then Mayor Su would definitely know as well. Furthermore, Mayor Su was a very noble and virtuous person. How could he possibly invite such a person to Jing Yunzhao's birthday party? Of course. Fan Liqin nodded without hesitation. It's a pity that I wasn't able to help Mayor Su like your father when I donated money to charity. However, I am fortunate enough to be here this time. I want to see how magnanimous that young lady is. Hua Tianxian rolled her eyes. Magnanimous? He couldn't even recognize her when she was standing right in front of him. Boss Fan, since you were invited by Mayor Su, you should respect the guests here. It's not right to insult them like this. After Hua Tianxian said this, she snorted softly and turned her head away. She clearly didn't want to talk to Fan Liqin anymore. Fan Liqin glanced at her and immediately frowned. Could he have made a mistake? Was the daughter of the Hua family really friends with this little girl? Chapter 1008. However, as soon as this thought came to mind, he immediately shook his head in denial. What kind of status did the Hua family have? Who was this girl? Miss Hua, as an elder, of course I wouldn't casually insult someone, but I'm doing this for your own good. If you don't believe me, you can ask her if she knows someone called Pak Yuan. Fan Liqin was determined to expose this little girl's fake face and did his best to prove her vulgarity to Hua Tianxian. Yes, she does. So what? Jing Yunzhao smiled as if she was looking at a clown. She had invited Fan Liqin over to humiliate and attack her, but she didn't expect him to take the initiative to come looking for trouble. This saved her the trouble of thinking of a way to start a conflict. You admitted it yourself. Fan Liqin sneered, that Pak Yuan is a man in his 30s. His ex-wife was a loose woman, and he himself isn't a good person either. I even heard that he had another girlfriend, and you appeared with him at Hua's jewelry to buy some luxury goods. Isn't that right? Miss Hua, she hid a violet bracelet from Hua's jewelry. If you don't believe me, you can check it out and see if it was bought by someone called Pak Yuan. How could Pak Yuan buy an item worth 10 to 20 million and give it to someone who has no relationship with him? Even if it was given to his sister, it wouldn't be appropriate. Therefore, she is Pak Yuan's little lover outside. Halfway through her words, Fan Liqin's lecherous eyes suddenly became filled with disgust. She fiercely said to Jing Yunzhao, calling you a little lover is already praising you. I think you can't even be compared to a prostitute. At least those women aren't as greedy and insatiable as you. Look at the way you're dressed. Once you open your mouth, you're clearly someone who doesn't know what's important. Other than Bai Yuan, do you have other financial backers outside? You're so young yet so casual. What did your parents teach you? Fan Liqin's continuous words were enough to make a little girl feel ashamed. However, Jing Yunzhao's actions were upright, so naturally, he wasn't included. Hua Tianxian finally remembered that Jing Yunzhao had suddenly called her a few days ago to ask her to help deal with a bidding incident at Hua's jewelry. At the time, she had agreed without hesitation and reported it to her parents. She heard that the bidder had backed out of the deal, but because of Jing Yunzhao's advance warning, the bidder hadn't returned the money. From the looks of it, that person was none other than President Fan. However, at the mention of the violet bracelet, Celestial Immortal Hua recalled it and had a deep impression of it. Hua's jewelry did indeed have a set of royal purple treasures at the main shopping center in the capital city. The price was exorbitant. Some time ago, Mayor Su had called her father and personally ordered the bracelet. He didn't even ask her father to send someone to deliver it. Instead, he took it very seriously and personally went to pick it up. In recent months, the Hua Corporation had only had one set of royal purple treasures. Hua Tianxian couldn't help but look at Jing Yunzhao a few more times. Her eyes were filled with emotion. She hadn't expected that Mayor Su would dote on her so much. It seemed like her life as the daughter of the Su family was pretty good. However, when Fan Liqin looked at Hua Tianxian, he misunderstood again. He thought that Hua Tianxian already had suspicions about Jing Yunzhao. Miss Hua, with your status, it's better if you don't interact with her too much. Otherwise, she'll ruin your reputation. Am I right? After Fan Liqin said this, he pushed his daughter forward. This is my daughter, Wei Wei. You two should get along well. Why don't Miss Hua and my daughter go shopping somewhere else first? Chapter 1009. Fan Weiwei's expression was one of embarrassment. Her father seemed to have once again treated her as a commodity that could be used, casually arranging her life. However, she didn't dare to refuse. Privately, she gave Jing Yunzhao and Hua Tianxian an apologetic look. She was completely at a loss for what to do. She was a 20-year-old girl, yet she looked as confused and flustered as a child. She looked rather pitiful. Jing Yunzhao knew that this Fan Liqin was a great son. Originally, he thought that Fan Liqin's wife and daughter would have some tricks up their sleeves. Otherwise, they wouldn't have chosen to bring the twins back to the Fan Liqin family to attack Tan Shi. However, now that he saw Fan Weiwei's appearance, he immediately understood that Fan Liqin's wife might not have any tricks up her sleeves, but she was completely powerless. This Fan Liqin in front of him could be said to be the epitome of a scumbag. He occupied his wife at home and raised his illegitimate children outside. He even took pride in it and never got tired of it. Have you said enough? Jing Yunzhao finally spoke. Hua Tianxian stood to the side. He couldn't tell what her attitude was, which made Fan Liqin a little confused. Flying into a rage out of humiliation. There's no Pak Yuan here. No one can help you. Moreover, do you think that the cousin of the Su family will care about you? I invited you here only for the sake of face. You, a wild girl, dare to be impudent here. What a joke. Fan Liqin didn't back down in the slightest. In fact, she was full of confidence. Jing Yunzhao didn't get angry. Instead, he laughed and glanced behind Fan Liqin. What a coincidence. Fan Liqin thought that Pak Yuan wouldn't appear at all. At this moment, their eyes met and he walked in her direction. Because the banquet had already begun, most of the people had already arrived, including Yunling Medical's Qin Shuwei. He was also nearby, looking around without a trace. What are you looking at? Seeing Jing Yunzhao remain silent, Fan Liqin said in disgust. Then, he subconsciously turned his head in the direction of Jing Yunzhao's gaze, and his expression immediately changed. Why is Pak Yuan here? There was also a woman beside him. Although the woman looked to be in her 30s, she had a mature and steady charm. Pak Yuan was even calmer when he saw Fan Liqin. After approaching him, he directly asked, "What nonsense is Boss Fan spouting now?" "So it's Xiao Bai. You're really like a lingering spirit. To be able to come to a place like this, it seems like you're quite capable," Fan Liqin said sarcastically. "Thank you for your praise, Boss Fan. However, I'm still no match for Boss Fan. You're so resourceful." Not only did you come to the Su family, you even dared to bully a guest of the Su family in front of so many people. It seems like you don't care about Mayor Su. Could it be that you found a big backer? Pak Yuen sneered. Fan Liqin's expression turned ugly. Xiao Bai, 2 days ago, your wife, Tan Shi, caused a huge commotion. Don't tell me you didn't see it. I don't know what you think of such a wonderful scene. Fan Liqin deliberately dragged Tan Shi into the conversation. That Tan Shi had been silent ever since she was raped. She hid at home all day, not daring to go out. After all, the photo was too clear. Although the key parts were censored, everyone could see her face clearly. Therefore, the moment she went out, others could recognize her. Although Pak Yuen had already come forward to explain that he and Tan Shi were no longer a couple tomorrow morning, Tan Shi had messed around with several men. Her relatives and friends all felt ashamed. The current Pak Yuen had not seen Tan Shi. If he saw her, he would probably be even more shocked. In just a few short days, she had already lost her previous glory. She stayed at her parents' house all day long. She was as dumb as a wooden chicken. She even needed her parents to serve her food and drink. Chapter 10:10. Tan Shi's entire life had been ruined by Fan Liqin. If that man had not appeared, she would have obediently followed Pak Yuen for the rest of her life. She would have given birth to 2 children for him, and from then on, she would have taken care of her husband and children. Perhaps her life would have become unreasonable and she would nag non-stop every day, but Pak Yuen would never abandon her no matter what. Even if she did not have a rich life, it would definitely be a stable and ordinary life. But now, everything was ruined. Her reputation was gone, her son was gone, and her husband was gone. Although her parents loved her, they sometimes despised her for causing such an embarrassing situation and embarrassing them. She even wanted to die, but she did not have the courage to do so. Therefore, she could only drag it out and go crazy in despair every day. She did not know if she was torturing herself or the people around her. However, even if Pak Yuen saw Tan Shi's current miserable state, he probably would not have any pity for her. That woman had already squandered all of his feelings, leaving nothing behind. She was no different from a stranger. Moreover, she had chosen the path herself. Even if she fell to her death or became disabled, she had to continue walking it. She could not let him, who had already set foot on another bright path, go back on his words and help her fall to her death in a deep ditch. Therefore, even if Fan Liqin mentioned her now, Pak Yuen still did not even frown. Boss Fan, you're only a few years older than me, and you've already lost your mind. Tan Shi is not my wife. She's your woman. You sent your woman to another man's bed. It seems like you have a soft spot for cuckoldry. Also, speaking of the recent news. Boss Fan, it seems that other than the small media company you invested in, no one else dares to say a word, right? Pak Yuen mocked. That's because others were frightened by the fake goods you found. I don't know how you got in, but that's good. In a while, I'll personally ask Mayor Su if he gave that order. Fan Liqin became angrier the more he thought about it. At this time, he even had another guess. Maybe this Pak Yuen had bribed Mayor Su's people and used Mayor Su's name to give orders. Let's take a look then. Pak Yuen looked straight ahead. Fan Liqin felt stifled in his heart. Miss Hua, you've seen it for yourself. This little girl is a slut that anyone can fuck. Pak Yuen is one of her lovers. You have to stay away from her. Hua Tianxian could not help but be speechless. Boss Fan's real intention was not to make her stay away from Jing Yunzhao, but to humiliate her. The place where they were standing was very lively. Now that he was pointing at Jing Yunzhao's nose and scolding him, how could they ignore it? Suddenly, everyone looked at each other in dismay. Jing Yunzhao's face was very beautiful, but she was a stranger. Although only a few ladies remembered that she was the little girl who had donated money to charity, they did not think too much of it. How could they remember the events of that day so clearly? Moreover, Jing Yunzhao had put on makeup today and specially dressed up, so there were some differences between her and the Su Xianlan of 20 years ago. Su Xianlan rarely appeared in public other than when she was treating illnesses and administering medicine. Moreover, her appearance was more gentle. At that time, there was no modern makeup technology. Therefore, after all this fuss, Jing Yunzhao and Su Xianlan's resemblance was reduced by 30 to 40%. The remaining resemblance could not be linked at all because of the long time that had passed. Fan Liqin, say that again if you have the guts. Jing Yunzhao stared at him as if she was throwing cold knives at him. Say it again. So what if I say it 10 times? What kind of storm can a few little girls from the countryside stir up? I'm going to talk to Mayor Su later to prevent an indecent person like you from leading the Su family's daughter astray. Chapter 10-11. Fan Liqin wasn't afraid of a little girl, and curses came out of her mouth. That person's triangular eyes sparkled. While he spoke, he sized up Jing Yunzhao from head to toe. He casually dusted off his clothes, causing his body to sway a few times. His eyes were filled with disdain as he continued, "You can even afford to wear a bracelet that's worth tens of millions. Who knows how many times you'll have to be slept with before you can get it back. I've seen many women like you who can only show off on men. You want to be in the limelight in this kind of place. Anyone can tell that you're not serious with your coquettish attitude. You're the only one who's stupid." He spat out a mouthful of turbid air and felt a wave of comfort in his heart. The past few days had really angered him quite a bit. There were many times when he wanted to curse, but he didn't have the chance. Now that this little girl had delivered herself to him, she couldn't blame him for being impolite. Fan Liqin's words were extremely unpleasant to hear. Many people present frowned as they felt that it was unbearable to hear. They were all honored guests invited by Mayor Su. When had they ever heard such words? They looked at the little girl who was being scolded and pitiful, but they didn't know the situation and couldn't help her. Otherwise, if they really helped a woman who wasn't serious, it wouldn't sound good if word got out. Su Chu and Xiao Haiqing, who were beside Jing Yunzhao, were so angry that their faces turned red. They couldn't believe that someone dared to scold Jing Yunzhao in front of them. Thinking back to when Jing Yunzhao was besieged by a group of reporters, the unpleasant words were just as so. This Fan Liqin was even more powerful than those shrews in the marketplace. Of course, his guts were even more arrogant. On the other side, Hua Tianxian and Ren Xingyue were also angry. "Boss Fan, please conduct yourself with dignity," Hua Tianxian said angrily with a cold expression. "Yunzhao." Xiao Haiqing wasn't in a hurry. She tilted her head and called out, as if she was ready to teach him a lesson for her at any time. Jing Yunzhao's face turned green and red, but he wasn't angry. He had heard a lot of unpleasant words in his previous life. What was this? In fact, the more this Fan Liqin spoke, the more miserable his death would be. With so many people watching, he dared to scold her. Ha! Jing Yunzhao suddenly smiled coldly. Fan Liqin thought that the little girl in front of her had gone mad from anger. Before she could say anything, she saw Hui Yao reach out and place her handbag in Miss Hua's hand. Her eyes were cold and filled with a murderous intent. Fan Liqin could not help but feel her heart clench when she raised the corners of her eyes. Xiao Haiqing took a look and licked her lips. She also handed over the things in her hand. "Please take them." It was the same for Su Chu. In the next moment, Jing Yunzhao took 2 steps closer to Fan Liqin. Xiao Haiqing gave Su Chu a look, and the two of them moved a few steps to the side and surrounded Fan Liqin. Their expressions were a little dangerous, but it was hard to tell what was going on. If it were any other occasion, they would think that these three little girls were trying to get physical. But here. And they were wearing such beautiful and elegant clothes. Just as everyone was thinking, Jing Yunzhao suddenly picked up the tray next to her and viciously slapped the person. Fan Liqin was a little stunned. He immediately turned a few times to face Xiao Haiqing. Xiao Haiqing didn't care about her image. She lifted her skirt slightly and in the next moment, raised her leg and kicked the person towards Su Chu. Fan Liqin didn't expect that the three of them would dare to make a move. After spinning a few times dizzily, he came to his senses. He quickly steadied himself and reached out to strangle Su Chu. His ferocious look was especially frightening. Su Chu closed her eyes and raised her hand to slash fiercely, dodging the attack. Jing Yunzhao snorted coldly. From behind, she grabbed Fan Liqin's collar, lifted him up, and threw him fiercely to the side. Chapter 10-12. Jing Yunzhao wouldn't ruin her birthday party, so she aimed at the fountain. Fan Liqin's entire body fell in, creating a splash of water. In an instant, his body was soaked clean. "You shrews! You little slut, how dare you hit me? Where's the security? Where's Mayor Su? I want to see Mayor Su." In just a short while, Fan Liqin's face had turned green and red. Because he had hit the fountain's pillar when he fell, his nose was bleeding. It looked a little scary. Jing Yunzhao smiled coldly. "See Mayor Su. Okay, I'll get Mayor Su to come out and see you." "Get someone to invite him," Jing Yunzhao said simply as she turned her head and stared at the employee beside her. Originally, she only wanted Fan Liqin to do something to anger the public. Now was the perfect time. Although she had hit him, it was only a few hits. He could only blame himself for being stupid. Besides, she had recorded everything he had said with her phone. Otherwise, how could he have let her nag for so long without saying anything? Fan Liqin crawled out of the pool like a water ghost. His body was in pain. Xiao Haiqing snorted coldly when she saw this. She kicked him back into the pool. Fan Liqin was so angry that his legs turned to jelly. He was very angry inside. He didn't know what was going on at Mayor Su's house. It had been so long, but no one came forward to help him. With a belly full of anger, he stood in the pool and didn't come out. He was just waiting for Mayor Su's people to come and take a good look. When the time came, for the sake of Mayor Su and for the sake of his niece's upbringing, he would absolutely not allow such a woman to stay by his niece's side. Pak Yuan was the same. If he stood on the side of this wild girl, then he was doomed to lose Mayor Su's favor. Also, he had to get to the bottom of those calls to the media. Fan Liqin cut a sorry figure, while Jing Yunzhao stood to the side with a calm expression, not saying a word. Instead, he gave off the impression that he was lonely yet strong. He always felt that this girl had a strong temper and was unyielding. She didn't seem like the kind of woman who would do what Fan Liqin said. Not long after, Su Yuantek and Su Wanqing arrived. Originally, Su Yuantek was going to send someone to look for Jing Yunzhao. After all, it was almost time to introduce her. However, when the two brothers arrived and saw this scene, they were somewhat astonished. "First uncle, second uncle." Jing Yunzhao walked over and greeted them. Her crisp voice immediately reached everyone's ears. In an instant, countless people's faces lit up. Their pupils dilated as they were shocked beyond words. The Su family only had one junior, Su Yuantek. The only person who could call Su Yuantek and Su Wanqing uncle was the young lady who had just been found outside. That was, the young lady with the surname Jing. Fan Lichin's ears were filled with the sound of the gushing water from the fountain. In addition, he was dizzy from the fall. His mind was filled with ringing sounds, so he didn't notice the way she addressed him. Therefore, he ignored everyone's complicated gazes and treated Su Yuantek as a life-saving straw. He complained, "Mayor Su. You have to stand up for me. These 3 wild girls actually dared to be rough with me. Look at my clothes." The corners of everyone's mouths twitched. They didn't want to see Fan Lichin's stupid look anymore. The girl had already called him uncle, but he actually didn't hear it. If he had said that it was a misunderstanding before Su Yuantek spoke and took the initiative to apologize, perhaps the matter would have been lighter. Now, the moment he opened his mouth, he said that Mayor Su's niece was a wild girl. He was really courting death. Chapter 10:13. Fan Lichin's face was filled with anticipation and resentment. He was waiting for Su Yuantek to issue an angry command to chase the 3 wild girls out. "Say that again," Su Yuantek asked with a cold face. "Mayor Su. I'm also a guest you invited. Even if you don't give the monk face, you have to give the Buddha face. This girl doesn't give me any face at all. I only said a few words to her and she actually hit me." Fan Lichin said again. "What did you say to her?" Su Wanqing's gaze was faint and filled with a sense of judgment. Fan Lichin felt that the reaction of the Mayor Su brothers was a little strange. Shouldn't they have asked someone to pull him up first? Why did they ask him what he said without knowing the gravity of the situation? However, even though he was very suspicious, since he had asked, he still had to find an excuse to gloss over it. However, just as he was about to speak, Jing Yunzhao took out his phone from the small bag in Hua Tianqian's hands. After pressing a button, a very clear voice suddenly sounded in the air. "Fan Lichin, if you have the guts, say that again. Say it again. Even if I say it 10 times, so what? What kind of storm can a few little girls from the countryside stir up? I'm going to talk to Mayor Su later to prevent an indecent person like you from leading the Su family's daughter astray. You can even afford a bracelet worth over 10 million. Who knows how many times you have to be slept with before you can get it back? I've seen a lot of women like you who can only show off on men. You want to be in the limelight in this kind of place. With your coquettish attitude, anyone can tell that you're not serious. It's just that you're stupid." Even though Fan Lichin's voice didn't have any special characteristics, it could still be distinguished and there was no need to refute it. When Su Yuantek heard this, he was so angry that his face turned green. "I just found out that my, Su Yuantek's, niece is actually indecent in your eyes? Boss Fan, you sure talk big," Su Yuantek said sarcastically. Su Wanqing's face was so cold that it could even form ice. His eyes were bursting with anger, and he was already planning in his heart. He had never seen this boss Fan before, but if he wanted to, he could kill him at any time. "Niece? Who?" "Her." Fan Lichin was stunned and pointed at Jing Yunzhao. "That's right, it's her. The wild girl that you scolded to be worthless." Su Yuantek's tone made one's hair stand on end. He suddenly said, "I don't remember inviting Boss Fan over. How did you get in?" Fan Lichin's mouth twitched. "How could that be? This wild girl is Mayor Su's niece. That's why she's here, and that's why she's so arrogant." Fan Lichin was completely dumbfounded. His mind was in a mess. The people around him all had complicated expressions. He didn't know if they were gloating or mourning for him. "No. Mayor Su, let me explain. I really didn't know she was I saw her once at the jewelry store. She was wearing a bracelet that someone else bought, so I misunderstood." Mayor Su. After a while, Fan Liqin said in a panic. Everyone present was a famous and promising person. Su Yuantek may only be a mayor now, but in reality, if he wanted to, he could be an even higher official. His power was deeply intertwined, not to mention the business world. There were even people who said that they had received favors from him. Although he didn't know why, he heard that there were people who respected the Su family very much decades ago. It seemed to be because of Old Master Su. In short, there were 3 words: don't mess with them. Chapter 10:14. He had offended Mayor Su's niece in front of so many people. Bracelet. Are you talking about the violet jade bracelet? I personally went to President Hua to buy that item. Do you need me to bring the receipt for you to verify it? Su Yuantek snorted coldly in a low voice. Inside the warm glass building, he suddenly felt an icy chill. What? Then the violet jade bracelet was also. Fan Liqin suddenly felt that his brain wasn't enough to process this. After thinking about it carefully, it did seem to be the case. Jing Yunzhao and Pak Yuan hadn't bought anything in front of him at all. It was completely his subconscious. I'll ask again. How did you get in? Su Yuantek asked again faintly. Fan Liqin shivered. Mayor Su, I received an invitation. Where's the invitation? Bring it out for me to see, Su Yuantek said coldly. Fan Liqin's body stiffened. When his daughter heard this, she hurriedly took out the golden invitation from her bag. Su Yuantek took it and looked at it. He immediately said, Boss Fan, you really have the nerve to say that. You can even fake an invitation. You really surprised me. What kind of place do you think the Su family is? You think you can come as you please? What do you think the precious niece of Su Yuantek is? You think you can scold her as you please? Fake. That's impossible. Fan Liqin immediately retorted. Whether it's real or fake, you can compare it with someone else's and you'll know. I, Su Yuantek, won't bother to wrongly accuse you. Su Yuantek said coldly. This was the first time in 20 years that the Su family had invited so many guests. Naturally, they had to be attentive. Every invitation was personally signed by him. There was absolutely no possibility of fraud. However, although Fan Liqin's name on the invitation was very similar to his handwriting, the minute differences were still very big. This kind of thing could be easily distinguished by comparing or finding someone to do a comparison. Boss Fan, your invitation is indeed different from ours, Wu Tianxin's father added fuel to the fire and said with a smile while shaking his head. When Fan Liqin heard this, he felt as though someone had viciously smacked him with a hammer. His entire being was so depressed that he was about to explode. His hands trembled as he felt the naked disdainful gazes around him. Anger, resentment. You did this, right? Fan Liqin stared at Jing Yunzhao and said, Mayor Su, as long as you go and investigate, you'll know that I didn't fake this. Absolutely not. Impersonating Mayor Su's signature. Just this point alone was enough for Mayor Su to keep an eye on him. I did this. Boss Fan, did I specially invite you over to scold me? You were the one who took the initiative to appear in front of me to cause trouble. Don't throw dirty water at me like this. Jing Yunzhao said directly. That one sentence made Fan Liqin's heart feel stifled. He only felt that after the external injury, his heart was starting to ache faintly. Yes, from the very beginning, he was the one who took the initiative to look for this girl. Many people had seen it. Today, he was completely screwed. Just based on Su Yuantek's connections, there would be people who would take the initiative to toy with him until he died. More importantly, there was also Su Wanqing. This was a complete loss of reputation. It was guaranteed that after today, there would be countless people who would take the initiative to grab hold of his weakness and trample him into the dust. His cold lips trembled. At this moment, the phone on his body rang. His phone was wet, but because it was separated by his clothes, it was only a little wet and didn't break. Looking at the caller ID, he gritted his teeth and picked it up. After all, he had already offended Mayor Sue, Boss Fan. Something happened. Just now, someone exposed the matter of the female student from half a year ago. A panicked voice suddenly sounded from the other end of the phone. Naturally, it was released very quickly on the internet, not to mention the speed of dissemination. What? What female student? Boss Fan didn't understand. Chapter 10-15. Fan Lichin wasn't pretending to be dumb. He really didn't remember who that female student was. After all, half a year ago, he had given an order to scheme against an extremely ordinary family. To him, it was simply a small matter. After the limelight had passed, it was naturally cast to the back of his mind. It's the one who you asked me to publish the news about a female student who angered her mother to death because she wanted to buy expensive electronic products. Boss Fan, what should we do now? The news is inaccurate and 2 people have died. If we allow other media outlets to continue spreading it, a small media company like ours won't be able to handle it. You're also a shareholder. Quickly help us think of a way to deal with it, the other party hurriedly said. Jing Yunzhao, who was standing at the side, heard everything clearly. She didn't expect the matter to be settled so quickly. She immediately gave Pak Yuan a look of approval. After being reminded by the person on the other end of the phone, Fan Lichin remembered. There was indeed such an incident, however, it was handled very well at the time. The female student had died, and the father had taken the money. Even if there was a reason, it was unreasonable. Why would there suddenly be media outlets? Her eyes suddenly widened and she looked at Pak Yuan. She stared fixedly at him. Was it him or that girl? Boss Fan, you don't look too good. Did you do something immoral? Let me give you a piece of advice. Karma doesn't go well. Even if a person is dead, they might suddenly come back to life and talk to you about the past. Jing Yunzhao said eerily. Fan Lichin shivered. When she said that, he suddenly remembered the face of the female student that he had completely forgotten. There was grievance, hatred, and anger. It's you. The 2 words seemed to be squeezed out from between his teeth. This little girl who looked so young actually came up with such a plan. Thinking about it carefully, she probably had it all planned out long ago, right? To be able to find someone to investigate his background in such detail, it must have started from the moment Tan Shi's post was released. She did it so quietly, as if she had forgotten about him. She didn't give him a single threat. She was obviously Mayor Sue's niece, but she didn't show it in front of him at all. She even had someone send him an invitation. She knew that he would definitely choose to come when he saw the invitation letter. As long as she arranged for the staff to inform them in advance, no one would carefully check whether the signature on the letter was real or fake. It would make him think that he was holding a real one, and then, attract his attention so that he would take the initiative to cause trouble. In such an occasion, with such a big lineup, not to mention scolding this little girl, even if he only caused a little trouble for her, Su Yuantek would severely reprimand him or even drive him out for the sake of his niece's face, right? And he even chose today to expose this matter. At this time, Fan Lichin only felt a chill on her body, a feeling of fear and regret. It was as if all fame and fortune had stopped at this moment. What are you in a daze for? Why haven't you asked Boss Fan to leave yet? After a while, Fan Lichin heard Su Yuantek's cold voice. Following that, someone pulled at his body. His entire body was almost dragged out of the pool, leaving a long watermark on the ground. Little slut, after being a fallen phoenix for so many years, I don't believe that you haven't done that kind of thing. I don't believe that there's nothing going on between you and Pak Yuen. What rich young miss, you're not worthy. He was furious, and when he was pulled away, he suddenly exploded with rage. In any case, he had already thoroughly offended the Su family. Even if he cursed a few more times, it wouldn't make any difference. Chapter 10:16. Fan Lichin's roar made everyone's scalps go numb. They all cautiously glanced at Jing Yunzhao, but found that her expression didn't change in the slightest. She didn't give off the slightest feeling of blasphemy. I'm sorry. Fan Lichin's daughter hurriedly bowed and said, then turned around and ran out. Su Yuantek's expression eased a little. Zhao, uncle will seek justice for you. Su Yuantek patted Jing Yunzhao's shoulder and said. Usually, at home, these two uncles would touch Jing Yunzhao's head and kill her at the slightest provocation. However, today, Jing Yunzhao's hairstyle was designed, so Su Yuantek restrained himself and settled for the next best thing. Many people already understood the meaning of this simple sentence. There was no need to talk about Su Yuantek's influence. A portion of the people here had received favors from Old Master Su. The Su family's medical connections spanned all over the world. They could get their hands on almost any kind of medicine. Who hadn't fallen sick before? Minor illnesses were fine, but the problem was that there were members of the family who had suffered from terminal illnesses. Of course, that was before the Jing family fell. The Jing family treated illnesses, and the Su family sold medicine. No matter how rare something was, they would find it. The two families were like branches of the same tree. Although the Jing family no longer had an heir, this friendship was still counted on the Su family's head. This influence wasn't small. Moreover, many people here knew in their hearts that the Li family, who had helped the Jing family set up big hospitals, hadn't learned the essence of the Jing family's medical skills. They could treat ordinary illnesses, but if they encountered a serious illness, they would have to find Old Master Su. Although his medical skills couldn't compare to the Jing families of the past, he was definitely an outstanding doctor. Therefore, at this moment, there was no need for Su Yuantek to say anything. Fan Lichin would naturally be taken care of by someone else. Everyone. After Jing Yunzhao relaxed, Su Yuantek put his arm around her shoulder and said to the crowd, Zhao grew up outside, but she's good at everything. As her uncle, I'm very pleased. Today, I've invited everyone here because Zhao is an adult today, and also to bear witness that she's no longer alone. The Su family doesn't have many descendants to begin with. Although her surname isn't Su, the blood of the Su family flows in her body. In the future, she'll have a share of everything in the Su family. I hope everyone will take good care of her in the future. After Su Yuantek calmed himself down, he spoke slowly. His voice had the ability to draw people's attention. Congratulations to the three of you. Miss Jing is so smart and sensible. She has a bright future ahead of her. Hua, Dad took the opportunity to speak first. Although he had crossed the line a little, Hua asked his daughter to be friends with Jing Yunzhao. It was natural for him to speak first. Miss Jing, I wish you all the best. I wish you all the best in the future, Zhou Minghai added. After that, the others hurriedly offered a few nice words. They were nothing more than praises or auspicious words. The gifts had already been presented, and someone was in charge of receiving and recording them at the entrance. Although the words weren't necessarily sincere, on a day like this, it was good to hear a little more. Jing Yunzhao thanked everyone politely. She was very elegant and courteous, as if she wasn't the one who had hit Fan Lichin. Not only that, but even Su Chu and Xiao Haiqing were the same. The two of them were dressed in ladylike clothes and naturally restrained themselves. It was as if they were two different people. "Cousin, happy birthday." Among the well-wishes, a very abrupt voice suddenly rang out. Everyone was stunned when they heard it, and they all looked over. "This. What?" Dad glanced at the woman. After some thought, he decided to call her Miss. Then he asked, "Miss, what did you just say?" Chapter 10:17. There were only a few people in the Su family. This woman who had suddenly appeared claimed to be Jing Yunzhao's cousin. Didn't that mean that she was Su Yuantek's daughter? But judging from the woman's age, she didn't seem to be Su Yuantek's daughter. She looked like she was in her 30s. Judging from the way she dressed and talked, she didn't seem to be related to the Su family at all. "Hello, boss. I'm Yun Zhao's cousin. My name is Song Xiaoyu. I used to live in the same town as Yun Zhao. Her father is my uncle. Our families are quite close." Song Xiaoyu's face was flushed red. She looked embarrassed as she clutched her clothes with both hands. She looked uneasy. Jing Yunzhao was dressed beautifully, but this cousin of hers was wearing a simple turtleneck sweater. She was so hot that she was sweating under the heater. She looked out of place and made people ponder. Jing Yunzhao's eyes flashed, and a dangerous glint flashed across her eyes. She was the one who had personally ordered this person to leave. Her words carried weight in the family. Her two uncles had never interfered in her private affairs, so it was even more impossible for them to ask her to stay. Even if she wanted to stay, she wouldn't appear in front of her in such a manner. The only possibility was Shinshi. If that was the case, she didn't know if Shinshi had specially arranged for this person to enter the Su family or if it was just a coincidence. Hua's dad looked at Su Yuantek awkwardly and didn't ask any more questions. Su Yuantek frowned and said, "Who asked you to come?" "No one asked me to come. I'm a stylist, and I just happened to meet her. But I don't know why she's ignoring me." But after thinking about it, I realized that it wasn't easy for me to meet her, so I had to finish what I wanted to say. Otherwise, I would be letting my uncle down. Song Xiaoyu continued. Now that she had appeared, it would be even harder to explain if they asked her to shut up and leave. Although Jing Yunzhao didn't care about other people's opinions, she was now a member of the Su family. She couldn't let others talk nonsense about her. The Su family already had a lecherous and hedonistic Suyu, so they definitely couldn't have another person with a bad reputation. Thinking of this, Jing Yunzhao suddenly smiled like a spring breeze. I wonder if Big Sister Song has something to say. Jing Yunzhao looked very friendly, which was a little unexpected. Song Xiaoyu relaxed. She was right. As long as everyone was present, Jing Yunzhao could only admit to it. "Cousin, I'm happy that you're celebrating your birthday, but why didn't you bring your uncle over? Uncle was really living a miserable life. Our family used to be good, but after you broke off your relationship with him, we didn't have a penny. His aunt is gone, and his little cousin is gone. If you don't care about him, he might starve to death one day." Song Xiaoyu hurriedly said. "Don't you still have a cousin?" Jing Yunzhao was still smiling, but her smile was as cold as ice. "Cousin is a boy. How could he know how to take care of people? Besides, he's still young. Now that you've found your family, it's time for him to enjoy his life. It wasn't easy for him to raise you all these years," Song Xiaoyu hurriedly said. After that, Shinshi hurriedly walked out and tugged at Song Xiaoyu. "Didn't I tell you not to come over? Mrs. Su, you're really nice. Thank you for your kindness, but no matter what, I have to make things clear with my cousin. Otherwise, many relatives in town will say that she's unfilial." Song Xiaoyu struggled. Jing Yunzhao narrowed her eyes. Sure enough, she jumped out on her own. If Xinshi didn't jump out in the name of kindness in front of everyone, then after the guests left, she would have to face Su Yuantek's anger. Therefore, it wasn't worth it. So now she had to prove her innocence in front of everyone and gain their respect to prove her kindness. What's the matter? Su Yuantek stared at Xinshi and asked. Under everyone's gaze, it wasn't good to be too cold. Chapter 10:18. Xinshi was a little flustered and apologetic. Feeling the inquisitive eyes of the crowd, she hurriedly apologized. I'm sorry, Xiao. I just saw someone dragging her out, so I asked out of curiosity. Knowing that she is your cousin, I thought about it and asked her to stay. We had a meal in an inconspicuous place, which could be considered as a polite way to repay the kindness of your adoptive parents. But I didn't expect that she would suddenly come here. I'll take her back now. She made it sound as if Jing Yunzhao treated his guests badly. There's no need. Jing Yunzhao smiled. Thanks to you, the dog came out and bit me. If I don't explain it clearly, I'm afraid that everyone will think that I, Jing Yunzhao, am a heartless villain. Who will dare to get along with me in the future? Under the eyes of everyone, he still had to do what he needed to do to save face. Zhao, did your aunt do something wrong? Xinshi hurriedly said. She was a little flustered. Her gentle and kind appearance made people couldn't help but worry about her. Aunt, you are an elder. I don't blame you if you did something wrong. But, my uncle knows my past very well. Why don't you know about it? Jing Yunzhao paused and said, after I was recognized, my uncles also investigated it themselves. A lot of things happened to me in the past. For example, I was abused by my adoptive father when I was young. I was neglected by my adoptive mother as a tool to ward off evil spirits for her children. Aunt, did you ignore these? Xinshi then hurriedly said, I don't know these things very well. And after all, you know this person. It's not good to drive her out like this. What's wrong with that? Jing Yunzhao directly denied, and then said, Aunt, you don't know what kind of suffering I suffered when I was young. Do you not know, or do you not want to know? You've been hovering in front of me every day, asking me all sorts of questions. You can't wait to know everything about me. I've already said that even if Uncle didn't tell you what he found out, you should still remember what I've said. Could it be that you've forgotten? Xinshi's face changed. She knew that Jing Yunzhao was lying now. Recently, the two of them had been meeting almost every day, but every time, it was always her who sent Jing Yunzhao some food. Jing Yunzhao also didn't speak much, and most of the time, it was just probing words that didn't reach the point. You are the birthday girl. Whatever you say. I will ask someone to take her away. Xinshi moved forward instead of retreating. Cousin. Song Xiaoyu called again. She was still struggling. It seemed that she didn't give face to Xinshi. Jing Yunzhao's expression suddenly turned bleak. Don't you feel guilty calling me Biamei? Which one of the Qiao family's relatives didn't mock me? Are you trying to ruin my reputation by suddenly coming to acknowledge me as your relative? You asked me to take care of my adoptive father. How ironic. 2 or 3 years ago, there were people who pretended to be my biological parents. Not only did my adoptive father not help me, he even beat them up and sold out everything about my childhood. It almost made me believe that those people were real. Not only that, they even found countless reporters to say that I was ungrateful, and everyone knew about it. However, there were already people who judged what happened back then for me. Whether or not I was heartless will be known after an investigation. You know very well in your heart whether or not you have any good intentions by criticizing me here. I don't want to talk about the past. That's why I asked you to leave. If I really pursue the matter, don't talk about taking care of my adoptive father. I can even directly sue him and send him to jail. Chapter 10:19. Xiao Weimin was the man she was most afraid of and hated in her previous life, so she didn't choose to let him go to jail. Now, he had become a useless person. His daughter was missing, and his son despised him. His life was a problem, and he didn't even have any hope for the rest of his life. This kind of suffering was more torturous than going to jail. Zhao. Su Yuantek looked at her with distress. Auntie, take a look for yourself. You'll know if I'm repaying kindness with evil by chasing her away. Jing Yunzhao took out a wet tissue from her bag and raised her arm to wipe it. Suddenly, a few shocking scars appeared on her flawless arm. It was obvious that they were caused by cigarette butts. Shenqi's pupils shrank. Why hadn't she seen them before? Did your foster father do this? Su Wanqing suddenly rushed over, grabbed her arm, and asked while gritting his teeth. Jing Yunzhao's skin was very good. It was delicate and tender, so it made people feel that she hadn't suffered much. However, this was caused by eating fruits nourished by the space all year round. There were only two places that she hadn't specially improved. One was her hands, and the other was the scars on her arm. She had done all kinds of work since she was young. Her hands were rough with frostbite, scalds, and calluses. Although the scars had faded a lot because of the space products, there were still some left. However, because she knew martial arts and medicine, people subconsciously thought that the scars were caused by hard work. Therefore, people rarely asked about them. As for the cigarette scars on her arm, if she wasn't wearing long sleeves, she would mostly cover them with ointment. She wouldn't show them to others. She could heal the scars, but she didn't want to. Every time she saw these scars, she would be very satisfied with her current life. She didn't even dare to be tired. This scar made everyone suck in a breath of cold air, and the way they looked at her immediately turned into sympathy. With these scars, it couldn't be said that she had falsely accused others in order to escape from her previous poverty, right? She had never thought that Jing Yunzhao had such a hidden card. She had always been calm about the past, so she didn't feel that she had been wronged. Zhao, I didn't expect you. Why don't you let us take a look? She immediately looked distressed and quickly made up for it. If Jing Yunzhao did not show the scar, no matter how much she said, others would think that she was looking for an excuse for herself, or even that she had wronged her adoptive parents. But now, it was different. Her body, hair, and skin belonged to her parents. Even if they were her adoptive parents, they should not have been so heavy-handed. Beating a child was nothing, but causing such devastating scars was abuse. If he really treated her like his own daughter, why would he leave these behind? Aunt Shen, my uncle still knows to check and ask. Even if he doesn't know about the scars on my body, he will know that I used to live a bad life. He shouldn't expose my scars at this time. Jing Yunzhao changed his words at this time. It was reasonable. Others would only think that she was disappointed, but they wouldn't think that she was rude. It's my fault. I was deceived. I thought that it would be good for you to meet your old friends. Auntie Shin, your words are getting more and more ridiculous. My god-grandfather, friends, and the others have already stayed at my house for a few days. They've been friends with me since a few years ago. Your words make it sound like I don't care about the people I used to know. What exactly do you mean? Jing Yunzhao mercilessly retorted. Using the relatives of the Qiao family to annoy her. Qiao Weimin had been crippled by her. Why would she be afraid of Song Xiaoyu? Chapter 10:20. Jing Yunzhao pressed on step by step, and her eyes seemed to be full of disappointment towards Shenqi. However, Shinshi had left a good impression on others for so many years. Although they felt that she had done something wrong, they only felt that it should be a momentary mistake. Therefore, although they looked at Jing Yunzhao with some sympathy, they also felt that she shouldn't be so aggressive. Jing Yunzhao knew that Shinshi had left a bad impression on everyone over the years, so it was impossible for her to ask Shinshi to give her an explanation in front of so many people. Therefore, after her outburst, she changed the topic and said, "Uncle, I was also angry for a moment. I was a little rude just now. I hope you don't mind." These words were said by Jing Yunzhao to Su Yuantek. Many people praised her in their hearts that she was willing to let go after suffering such a big grievance. She was young, but not stupid. Every word completely guaranteed her own interests and let the people who bullied her suffer some hidden losses. Her mind was really not like a child who grew up in a small place. It's uncle's fault. On your birthday, you see one bad person after another. Su Yuantek looked at her guiltily. When his eyes swept to her arm, he seemed to be extremely distressed. This child was good at everything. She used him to scheme against anyone and didn't hide anything. He knew clearly about Fan Liqin, but he didn't expect that she didn't tell everything about herself. From such a serious scar, he could imagine how scared and helpless she would be at the moment of injury. It has nothing to do with uncle. Jing Yunzhao said a few words and stared at Song Xiaoyu, who was confused, and said casually, "The stylist this time was invited by Aunt Xin. Her requirements are very high. It seems that you are living a good life now. Who have you styled before?" When Song Xiaoyu heard this, she nervously looked at Shinshi. I just asked. They said that I was the assistant of the famous stylist Tao. I can be considered to have a bright future. Shinshi quickly said. Jing Yunzhao chuckled. Assistant, is it? A starving camel is still bigger than a horse. The assistant of a famous designer must have some standard, so you should know how to dress up, right? Song Xiaoyu didn't know what Jing Yunzhao was going to do. She just felt that her change was too strange. You don't have to be nervous. Just now, Auntie Shin said that I should repay my adoptive parents. Even though I don't agree, after thinking about it, you're still just a distant relative of theirs. We've also met a few times a few years ago. Now that we're able to meet here, it's fate. If you're really capable, I can introduce you to a better job, Jing Yunzhao suddenly said in a friendly tone. However, although these words seemed normal, it made people think more. They were cousins who had not seen each other for many years. Moreover, they were not related by blood. Was there a need to be polite? Most of these people had some property, especially those who had experienced wealth after poverty. They had all experienced the past of relatives begging for money. They were somewhat disgusted by this kind of shameless person. Moreover, as Jing Yunzhao said, they hadn't seen each other for a few years. They couldn't even be regarded as acquaintances. It would be strange if he didn't have ulterior motives for suddenly being so enthusiastic in this occasion. This Shinshi was too careless and simple. She actually believed the words of this kind of person. After being Mrs. Su for so many years, it seemed that it was too low-level to make this kind of mistake. After Jing Yunzhao finished speaking, he didn't wait for Song Xiaoyu to reply. He directly said something to the staff. Song Xiaoyu waited in a trance. After a while, someone directly pushed a row of clothes over. An employee directly sat on the stool and put the makeup box directly in front of Song Xiaoyu. What do you mean by this? Song Xiaoyu frowned. She had a bad premonition. Jing Yunzhao curled the corner of his mouth. Whether it's a mule or a horse, I'll show it. If you have the ability, in the future, rely on your hands to make money rolling in. But it's not enough to just rely on me to praise you. You have to show everyone your ability. Anyway, I have nothing to do today. You're tuning into the LoveLore Library YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.